Welcome, welcome, welcome. Hello, everyone, to the third episode of the Quill and Vial podcast. Welcome. I'm Cynical Alchemist, your co-host, long-time gamer since the early 1980s. In fact, I'm a very, very old person. But I've only been playing Elder Scrolls games since 2016. I was a convert from Fallout games, and I haven't looked back ever since I started playing Skyrim and Elder Scrolls back then. I'm pretty hardcore ESO. I do a little bit of non-ESO, but mostly ESO is my main Tamriel activity. I focus on classes and builds, and I see how much I can do with my particular playstyle, which I would describe as mildly misanthropic. And Liv, I'll hand over to you so you can introduce yourself.
I'm Olivia. I'm situating myself here to sit. Sorry about that. So I've been playing Elder Scrolls for a better part of a decade now. Actually, probably a lot more than that now. And right now, my main game is definitely Elder Scrolls Online. But I mean, we just had a huge anniversary release, so we'll be talking about that shortly. And so I've been playing a lot of Skyrim recently as well. But I played Skyrim extensively when it was first out. Played Morrowind. I skipped Oblivion, but don't tell anybody. And I played Skyrim and Elder Scrolls Online. Like you said, pretty hardcore Elder Scrolls Online player. I do a lot of other work as well with Elder Scrolls Online. Some fun stuff that'll be coming up, hopefully. So just be sure to follow me on Twitter for more stuff like that. But yeah, Elder Scrolls is pretty much my whole life outside of real life.
Cool. So, listeners, viewers, this is, as I said, our third episode. Our last two have established the general format. We have a bit of a casual chat to begin with, then we revisit what's been happening in Tamriel over the past month, covering game time, events, social media, other general news. And with that as the meal starter, Liv then comes in with a slapping big main course bowl of lore for everyone to ingest as one of the main segments of our podcast. And once we've had our fill of that meaty goodness, I follow up with dessert, with a distinct chemical flavour, making your taste buds tingle, maybe your head swim, much like they do when you actually imbibe alchemical reagents in Skyrim. And then I'll get into my chemistry lore, my alchemy lore, which I guess is a fairly unique take on a form of magic in Tamriel with connections to the real world. So that's what you've got to expect over the next 90 minutes or so, depending how long we talk for. Yeah, so looking forward to it. It's been a while. We missed our planned scheduled slot last time, which is a bit of a pity, but my computer almost blew up, so I couldn't really do much about it. There is a connection with my lore topic today. There is a connection.
And with your computer blowing up? Wow.
Yes, there is. I'll talk about that later.
But wow, I'm interested in the connection. That'll be interesting.
Yes. So what have you been up to, Liv? What have you been up to in game? What's been your big thing for the past 6 weeks with Elder Scrolls?
Well, there's been so much that's happened in Tamriel lately, in and outside of Tamriel lately. Deadlands came out. So that's a huge thing that happened. I feel like this. I feel like a four-armed Daedric prince is in front of me, and having to tackle him and talking about everything that's been happening is daunting. But
he is quite an overbearing presence, it has to be said.
He is very, very overbearing. I haven't really gotten into the Deadlands all that much as far as the main quest goes. I've done quite a few side quests, which have been very good, and I've explored all of the zones fully. Like I've explored everything, and I gotta say, honestly, I had very low expectations for the Deadlands because, as we see in Oblivion, it's basically looks like what a characteristic hell area would look like, fire, brimstone, all that.
Yeah.
and they really made it not that way in this DLC. I mean, I'm not going to give away any spoilers, and we're certainly not going to go over any like major spoilers here, but it's yeah. I mean, they made the zone very varied,
Yes,
which I was surprised.
I mean, they gave us a bit of a hint for that when they did the parcel reveal and showed us the two biomes,
They did.
the lightning biome and the flame biome. Um,
Hmm.
all I've done with the Deadlands is go into Fargrave, the city,
Okay.
um, and have a bit of a wander around. That's all I've done. I've not gone anywhere near Deadlands DLC. Apart from, I managed to pick up a few mythic leads from some activities, which is nice. I'm a
Oh, nice.
big fan of mythic items in Elder Scrolls Online, and I always try and make sure I get everything.
Mm.
So I'm looking forward to farming the rest of the leads for those because the mythic items can be incredibly powerful in gameplay. Oh, look at that! Mary's right up at
Yeah.
the camera. Excellent.
Oh, she is.
Get a nice view of
That's
our
right.
mutual best mate.
That's right. Oh, she's
Um,
the best.
yeah, but I actually, interestingly, I have not done anything story related to either Blackwood or Deadlands. My story
Oh,
content for
wow.
the last period, the major story content I've done is that I redid the Dark Brotherhood on my
Okay.
main because I hadn't done the Dark Brotherhood on my main character because
Okay.
it didn't seem right in terms of his backstory. But eventually, I got into the stabby and killed hundreds of people, death and destruction everywhere. Mainly for skill points. I did it
Right.
for skill points because I'm working on heaps of different builds for my main character, and I need all the skill points I can find. And
Yeah,
interestingly, for those
definitely.
who don't know, the small story DLCs at the end of each year always have an enormous amount of skill points. Clockwork City's got
Wow.
8. Mark Myers got 7. Dark Brotherhood's got 8. They always have heaps of story skill points. So if you're ever
Damn.
short on them, if anyone's listening, if anyone's interested, you can always find heaps of skill points in the mini story DLCs from each year's content. So it's a pretty good source of it.
Wow. Yeah,
Um,
that's a really good source of it. Dang.
but the most enjoyable thing I did was Murkmire. I mean, I've talked
Mm.
about this on I think in past episodes, and I've always tweeted a lot about it. Murkmire always turned me off because my computer performance always used to tank when I used to go into Murkmire. But multi-threading has completely changed that, and I had the most enjoyable weekend of story gaming that I have had in years in the Murkmire DLC. Um, I really, really got into. I've never been so engaged in a main quest storyline in Elder Scrolls Online for ages. Since
Damn.
my first one, which was Morrowind, actually was Vardenfell. I was hooked with Vardenfell when it came out in 2017.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it's beautifully written. Um, and I did it mainly because it's the precursor to anything you might want to do in Leowen, um,
Right.
because in Blackwood there's a lot of influence, Argonian influence, especially in the southern eastern region of the
Mm-hmm.
zone. And
Yep.
actually, I found there was actually some lore references to Leowen in the Murkmire
Oh,
DLC,
wow.
which
Really?
was yeah. There's a couple letters you find that talk about Argonians being in Leowen and stuff like that. It was really quite nice to. I thought I had to do it, but I didn't realize that I'd get so much benefit out of just feeling those lore connections. Um,
Yeah.
so it was pretty cool.
Knowing that it was going to be coming up,
Yeah,
or I mean, well, at the time we didn't know, obviously, but you now know since been a while
hmm
that Waylon's going to be the next thing you can do.
yeah,
That is really interesting. Which makes
yeah.
sense because they really did. You know, I mean, it's not spoiling it. You said it. You said as much just a couple seconds ago that they really made the zone of Leowen like a good mix of Imperial
hmm
and Argonian. Just
yeah.
Argonian part of it is probably my favorite part um, of that area. Like Gideon is fantastic. It's just a castle. It's just like a pure and simple
hmm
castle, and it's
hmm
Argonian things going on there. So it's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I have yet to do Murkmire. I haven't finished it.
Oh, there's a brilliant NPC. I love her. I just can't get enough of her. She's a fantastic NPC. She's an Argonian, and she starts every sentence by describing what her facial expression has done, and it's an
Oh my god.
incredible verbal tick that it's wonderful. You'll love her.
Oh, great. Oh, I can't wait. Wow,
She's
that
pretty
makes me
cool.
more excited about it.
Um, yeah. I actually had a little Twitter to and fro with Lehman about that because I tweeted that I enjoyed it so much, and he replied that he was happy that he'd been enjoying it, and I replied in a manner like this NPC would reply, and he liked that tweet, and I knew he got the reference, so it was pretty cool.
Yeah, that is really cool. Wow, because obviously that he worked on that
Yeah,
DLC.
yeah,
Yeah,
that was pretty
that's
sweet.
amazing. Wow.
The
Yeah,
other
did you like the Dark Brotherhood story though? I mean, it
Oh,
is
it's
what it
it's
is,
it's
kind of,
fun.
huh?
It's kind of
Yeah.
it's I mean it's the same as kind of background stories of the Thieves Guild. There's a threat to the guild, and you've got to combat it, and there's an internal uh, there's a protagonist with inside knowledge. It's the same kind of story map, if you like, for both those two guild
Yeah.
storylines. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's relatively fun. As I say, I didn't think I thought I thought I was just going to do it for the skill points for the main quest, but I ended up going all over Tamriel, stabbing everyone everywhere.
Oh, nice. That's great. The Blade of Woe is really fun.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
the way I connected to my character is my main character, his background is he's a bit of an alchemist, but he's not a Nightblade. So I mean, obviously, I've only ever done that quest on Nightblade before. So, but because he's an alchemist, he has invisibility potions everywhere. So he's just glugging them
Oh,
down and
yeah.
stabbing people, glugging them down, stab people.
Oh, I love that.
It was pretty cool.
It's a good way to go. Good way to like spin it. I
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, I grinded that because I wanted the title, so I like to collect titles as much as I can, like PvE titles.
Yeah, yeah.
And I, oh man, it was a slog. For sure, it was a slog.
Yeah, yeah,
Getting
yeah.
that title.
Yeah, I mean, I liked being able to maximize my daily guild points by doing a good job with the contracts. When you go into the extra
Yeah.
special little zone, and if you don't get caught, and if you do all the side quest of it, you get maximum 20 guild points for the day. It was fun being able to. It was the competitive side of me. Was really enjoyed trying to make sure I got everything right on the contract so that I can get the most points and keep going up the guild skill levels as quickly as possible. Yeah. But other than that, the only other major thing I've done in game is that I've tweeted about this all the time. I hate fake tanks, but I've come to the realization that in game, people will do what they will do, and unless they break code of conduct, terms of services, ZOS will do nothing about it. So I decided to change the way I play the game to minimize my annoyance, not by trying to control other people, but by doing something myself. So all of my 6 main characters can all now tank.
Wow,
So I can tank on my
that's great.
Nightblade, I can tank on my Necro, I can tank on my Stork, I can tank on everyone. So my 6 main core characters I use for gear progression and build progression, I've set them all up as tanks so that there are no fake tanks anymore for me because I am the tank. I can get through 18 pledges in a day. Just zoom in, tank it all, do it all myself. Don't have to worry about anyone. Get 16 keys in like it'd be a good solid evening's work. That'd be like 4 or 5 hours. But I don't have to rely on anyone, or I don't have to wait for anyone. I just queue up, get in, knock it out, fill my sticker book as quickly as possible, get all the consumables and currency as quickly as possible, and nobody bugs me because I'm the one that. And you're a tank, you know this. You go in, you do your job. You compensate for people's low DPS. You do the healing if the healer's not doing the healing. You make the dungeon work. That's what the tank does.
Sure, you're right.
So that's why I said my playstyle is mildly misanthropic. I assume people will be assholes, and I just take that into consideration so I don't waste my time. So
Yeah.
yeah, that was
If there's,
my 6 weeks in ESO.
yeah, if there's a will, there's a way. If people are afforded cool things that can potentially be used for terrible purposes, they'll do it. Like the queuing for whatever they want.
Yeah.
But that's good. That's good. At least you know. I mean, I'm sure you experienced the queue times that are maybe 3 seconds.
It's nanoseconds. It's almost
Yeah.
it's the queue's almost pinged almost before I've lifted my finger off the mouse button. It's just insane.
Yeah.
And I'm not used to it. In fact, it took me a while to get used to it because I'm normally used to Like, oh, I'll go do a dolmen, I'll go and do a public dungeon as I wait for the queue. But I ended up just being in dungeon after dungeon after dungeon. It was just exhausting. I had to take a break. I even had to go fishing. I even did fishing. I never
Wow,
fish.
that's what you know.
I never fished. Oh Lord, that was something else. But yeah. But it's my kind of groove with the game. I try and be as self-sufficient as possible. Try and do things without having to rely on others as much as possible, because we all have limited amount of time we can devote to a game. And my way of coping with that is to be able to do as much without having to rely on anyone or anything, and experience as much of the game without any waiting around, without any annoyance, without letting anyone annoy me, because my time is precious and my peace of mind is precious. So that's the way I play.
Yeah, absolutely, and that's why I love that you can do a lot of things by yourself. I mean, dungeons obviously you can't. You do need to rely on other people, whether it's a small amount where you're the tank and you rely on others to just do their job. But
Yeah.
I do like that you can play the rest of the game by yourself and do the story and whatnot, which is good.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Yes.
The Fargrave area, though, I wanted to touch on that. The city is beautiful and vertical, and it just like I look at cities like Alinor and Somerset, where the verticality of it is just purely visual. You can't really, I mean, you can go up a flight of stairs, but you can't really go. There's not multiple levels to the city, and it's very confusing, I guess, in some areas. Like where the daily people are in Somerset, like near the crafting area. It's just like a mess, in my opinion, over there. But Fargrave is a mess in that it's supposed to be like a shanty town looking kind of area. It's supposed to be kind of, cobbled together, because all these Daedra are here from around Oblivion. Mortals are there, and it's just this. I don't know. It's everything that I want large cities to be going forward. It's just amazing.
That's cool. I say I walked around it when it dropped in PTS, because I wanted to check out the new house, which I may end up getting, because I like the feel of Fargrave. It's kind of like a fancy. What's that? Mos Eisley.
It is.
It's like that Star Wars location. It's just that mishmash of races, cultures, and ne'er do wells and dark underside of society. It did really make me think about certain exotic Star Wars locations, even from Rebel One. Is that what's that the one with the prelude to episode 4 where they get
Rogue One.
Rogue One, yeah. You see, in there's a location in Rogue One on where they're in the city. They meet the blind force person and stuff. That location as well also made me think Fargrave.
That's right. That's a good point, because that's like, I totally didn't catch that, or didn't think about that at first. Now that you mention it, it does remind me of that place. That city.
So it's got that feel that you expect to find a wanderer, just unfurling their head and face mask and just sitting down in a dingy bar with all sorts of people and creatures around them. It just really it's got that kind of Star Wars resonance for me quite a lot.
Yeah, I agree. I think Fargrave has some interesting implications to the lore, like going forward, because I don't know. I don't want to spoil too much. I don't know much about the full story, but I don't want people to go in there with any bias or anything like that. But it definitely has some implications, not long standing, long stretching implications, which I'm all here for. I love that they change things and that the lore is constantly evolving.
Yeah, the juxtaposition of Daedra and humans or Tamrielic races, I think that's probably one of the biggest. I mean, it's not really a spoiler. I mean, it's pretty much all over the website when they revealed it. I think that's gonna be. I say I haven't experienced that. I haven't interacted with any of the NPCs, but that was the thing that I'm most looking forward to exploring how they've dealt with, rather than
Yeah.
Daedra being summonable beings without any agency. It's a very very different take on that type of creature, and obviously that way that type of creature then interacts with the other races of Tamriel.
Yeah, and yeah, that's what I've also been surprised and noticed as well is that they just have as much agency and I guess quote unquote free will as any mortal, Bosmer, Breton, Imperial Khajiit would have. So
Mm-hmm.
it's just interesting because at least to me, in my opinion, before it's been that they are tied to their realm or tied to Oblivion,
Yeah,
very
yeah,
tethered there, but
yeah.
like you said, summonable creatures. So it's just interesting. It's very interesting.
I mean, I guess we it was foreshadowed slightly through with Lyranth, who we meet
True.
first time in the Imperial City Prison dungeon. Uh,
Yeah.
so that's early DLC, but she's quite clearly a Daedra. She has her own agenda. It's she serves a prince, but she's doing stuff all for herself in that dungeon, and when we see her in the prologue for this year's content. So I guess they had kind of just they planted the seeds a long time ago, and at the beginning of this year to have for Daedra to be more rounded as beings, and she's an incredible character.
Yeah, she is.
Even before you consider this year's content, or purchasable content, because you
Mm-hmm.
experience her a lot in the prologue, which is free, and most people will have done the
True.
prologue multiple times already. But also, I say the back connection. This is where, and this is a big issue with me with lore in Elder Scrolls Online. So
Mm-hmm.
we're talking so much ESO, so much Skyrim to talk about.
I know.
Um,
I know.
with ESO, the dungeons can have some incredible lore, and in recent years they've embedded the dungeon lore with the greater narrative for the year in the story content. But the way that we're able to experience that lore can be really, really unsatisfactory, because it's very seldom that you're able to fully imbibe drink in the lore of a dungeon, because your deeps is run off pulling all the trash mobs and the bosses and bugging the quests so you can't get the skill point, and yeah, it can be a challenge to actually really, really delve into dungeon lore, and it's really it's a missing aspect of the gameplay that people can often not benefit from. And when the dungeon designers put actually, I mean, Finn, I think takes great pleasure in not just doing the mechanics of these dungeons when he makes them, but also drilling in the lore, really making it part of Tamriel. It's not just a random raid that could be in any fantasy game. The lore runs through it. The characters, the lore fragments, the story, the lore books, the quest narrative, everything is embedded deeply with the lore, but it's not something we can really experience easily ourselves.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
people might have done the Imperial City Prison dungeon from the Imperial City DLC, and they might not even have heard Lyranth say one sentence fully, and they've gotten to the end and killed the Lord Warden, and that's it. You wouldn't have, for a lot of people, they might not even have realised that they've met Lyranth before, because of
You
the
know
way
what? I
that
was
we
just gonna
experience
say
dungeons.
I didn't even realize Lyranth was in Imperial City.
Yeah,
Didn't even know. And I've done that dungeon millions of times.
exactly. But there she is. She's in there because she wants to get something for the Lord Warden, who serves a different Daedric prince. Yeah, see, 3 years ago she first appeared as a Daedra with agency, but only it's taken till now where we've really, really gotten to grips with that as the implications of that for the Daedric races.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, it's true. I, I don't know. I think I've been playing a little bit of Destiny as well during this last month or so, and they do something where they call it fire teams, where you can basically on the Bungie application, like they have a Destiny application on your phone and on the website too.
Mm-hmm.
You can like petition for hey, this like a group. Like you can just say put out on a board somewhere that says, "Hey, I'm going to be doing this X, Y, and Z content. Join up if you want to do it." I'm wondering if Elder Scrolls could benefit from something like that and saying like, "Hey, doing like where you could indicate that you want to do a story run of a dungeon or something like that,
Yeah.
or not even. I don't know. Just throw that out there."
It would be nice. It would be nice. I mean, at the moment, the standard response is join a guild.
Right. I mean that makes sense too. Yeah. But
it's the catch-all reply when people say, "Well,
right.
I'd like to be able to do this in a particular way," and they say, "Well, and they keep and they're right in a lot of ways because you cannot rely on a pug to enable you to do those things. It just doesn't work." Because people enter dungeons for all sorts of things. They're gear farming, they're pledge farming, they're skill point farming, they're XP farming. Lore comes way down the list of priorities in group events, in group activities like that.
Yeah, it really does. It's unfortunate.
And the one thing that has happened in recent years, and I picked this up when Rich and Finn were talking on one of Rich's streams, must be 4 or 5 months ago, and Finn said that the quest dialogue is triggered to play out regardless of whether you're doing quest markers or quest points.
Oh, right.
In the environment of the recent dungeons, the quest storyline will play out depending on your location. So if you want to, you can just chill out, let the dialogue happen, enjoy it. You won't be, and you can ask them the same questions as you would as if you were doing the dungeon for the first time. But again, that still requires you to be a bit more active in making sure you can find everything you need, because the quest itself will normally lead you to the critical points in that narrative. And also you need to be in a group that isn't firing ahead.
Yeah.
I think these days they've designed the dungeons a little bit better, so the quests don't bug. If somebody's runs ahead to the last boss and the previous mini bosses haven't been done. But there are some dungeons where that gets really screwed up. Some of the early game dungeons, Elden Hollow, prime example.
Yes, Elden Hollow. Yeah, that dungeon sucks anyway.
Yeah,
Just
Tempest Island can also be a little bit rough with that.
Yes, that too. Because of all the locations you have to travel to, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, just solving all the use of those problems.
Yeah. I mean, they do listen. I mean, I think they listen. They've got devs that are on stream that basically do Q&A repeatedly for like hours on end. I'm pretty sure Rich Lambert spends about half of his streams answering Q&A stuff in his stream, and he'll often have other devs with him. So it's the ability to interact with the head of the studio. I haven't seen that in any other game or any other MMO.
And how active they are on Twitter. Pretty much everybody, all of the devs, and Leeman, just so active.
We're really quite spoiled.
We are. And I say criticize the things you love. So we definitely love the devs and all that they do. But definitely, always a work in progress, I think.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's any other ESO things that we should touch on before we start talking about the main event. We had the Witches Festival.
Talked about. Oh yeah, we did. We did have the Witches Festival.
I ground that out really hard for the plunder boxes. I even went to the extent of making sure I did a trial a day and an arena a day to get the two the gold ones that are slightly less easy to come by. Because I wanted my doggo. I wanted my skull doggo. So
the skull doggo.
Very cute.
What? Yeah, it's a cute one. I don't tend to do events like holiday events. I don't know why. It's just not something that like pulls me or anything like that. It's not anything like a detriment to the game or anything like that, because I think they give you really fun rewards. But this year I was really trying to get the witch title, and I couldn't find enough time to grind.
Yeah, it's Geralt is now a witch, but that's been doing writs over 2 events, like last year's Witches Festival and this year's the Witches Festival. Two grinding out 2 events. The drop rate for the witches writs was a lot higher this year, but even still, they were rare as hen's teeth. And as I said, I was getting 7 or was it 7 gold plunder skulls a day by doing all the potential content. So I was doing the overland, the public or spawn boss that you can sometimes get, the dungeon boss, the delve boss, the dolmen boss, the trial boss, and the arena boss. I was getting them all each day, and even then I got 15 writs over the course of the event, 15 witches writs.
Oh wow! And it takes like 50 or something, 50 to.
I think it's 30. It's 30.
The thing, right?
Yeah, it's 30 to 30, get the title. Okay. Yeah. So, yeah, it can be a real pain.
Yeah,
but because the drop rates were a little bit better, the prices to buy them in guild stores was a lot lower this year. So I think a lot of people were able to get their achievement by just buying the writs from guild vendors.
Okay. That might be what I'll have to do next year. Yeah. Hopefully, if the drop rate's the same. Mm-hmm. But one thing I was going to say too it's been talked about extensively, but the armory station that came with Deadlands.
Oh yeah,
pretty good.
Yeah, mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm enjoying it.
I'm sure you are.
Because now all my characters got a DPS build, a PvP build, and a tank build. I've been spending a lot of gold in the Crown Exchange to get extra slots on the armory for my characters, and it's not cheap at the moment.
Gosh.
It's 1,000 gold per crown.
Oh wow!
At the Crown Exchange at the moment. Yeah, it's insane. I remember back 3 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, it was down as low as almost 180 gold per crown.
Yeah, I think I started in the Crown Exchange when it was 250 gold a crown.
Yeah.
Or the exchange was 250. Wow, that's crazy.
I luckily had a lot of chromium plates in my inventory that I hadn't used, and I will never use. I will never gold any jewelry that I wear on any build, because it's just economical madness. Because you can take one chromium plate and sell for 200,000 gold.
Oh jeez.
So I made 3 million in my guild store. I won the weekly league table for most sales in my trading guild. When I just dropped, it must have been like 15 pieces of chromium.
Holy shit, that's so much.
But yeah, I needed it for the armory slots. I've almost spent all on armory slots.
Wow.
But yeah. So it's if you're really clever about it, because I still use dressing room, which is an add-on that allows you to switch gear. But my base configurations for the thing I want to do, whether it's with DPS, I'll have all my attributes and stam. For tank, I'll have 40 health, 14 stamina, 10 magicka. For PvP, I'll have 20 health, 44 stamina. And my primary gear set for each of those activities, I have slotted in the armory, and my CPS for those, and my CP points for each of those 3 activities. So the only thing I have to do is either flick my Mundus over or my food choice over. And the great thing is it's free. Once you've set it up, you don't pay any more gold again to change your attributes or to whatever, or change your CP. I love it. It's fantastic.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. I did have a little bit of a meltdown when they had to reset all of the champion points, but it just made sense. It made sense if they had to do that. I just, me, I don't like to change anything, so I had a little bit of a meltdown, but it was no big deal. Just a bunch of screenshots.
Yeah. And it's, to be honest, it's never a bad thing to every 6 months or so to think again about where you've got your points allocated.
I know, you're right.
It can be pretty handy for your build that you suddenly realize, I've not been using this slottable, and this slottable would really, really help me. And suddenly you think you get, and they give us 2 extra sub-constellations in the warfare area.
Yes.
Which, if you'd not had to do that, you probably wouldn't even have looked at again. So I think it is useful to be forced to do it, but it can be a real pain. It can be quite triggering.
Yeah, it's nice for like the green constellation, because that one's more so just whatever. There's more variability to that. That's not like build breaking or anything. But so it's fun. Yeah, it was fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
a couple of other things I wanted to touch before we leave ESO.
Yes.
I'd say that we've got the Undaunted celebration coming up, which will be 12 days of Undaunted dungeon grinding, which is which is another reason why I set up all my characters to tank.
Jeez, yeah.
Because I want to maximise my loot drops from that. But the other thing I wanted to say was that people have been talking about the impact of New World. I think it's starting to have a manifest effect in game. Not just everyone's gone to New World or whatever. I'm actually seeing changes in game, especially in the Cyrodiil campaigns. The population rates on the main campaign are far lower than they used to be, and they're outside of ours. It is a dead zone. Even in the main campaign, the other campaigns, their times, the hours of activity have shrunk dramatically, to the extent that on the no CP campaign, which is the one which doesn't have the proc sets working, and there's like a window of time, like East Coast US time, from about 6 p.m. till midnight, where there's a lot of activity, and AD are bashing up against DC and vice versa, and EP are just like fritting around the edges. and then everything stops there. It's like everyone just leaves, and the campaign gets left in almost the state it was until the next day. Unless, of course, there's a few industrious players who just decide to flip the map to one colour, and then it changes back to the constant struggle between AD and DC. But there's only a very limited number of hours where people can actually have active gameplay, group gameplay in the Cyrodiil campaigns now. I think it's a little bit better than it was a couple of weeks ago, because I think a lot of people are getting tired of New World and the PvP there, but it still had a manifest effect on Cyrodiil.
There's also some pretty game-breaking things on. I've been following New World kind of closely, and there've been some glitches that were like just ridiculously game-breaking, where you could essentially pause the game and not get hit. Oh, it just was some ridiculous stuff. That was just like all back-end system issues. So I think a lot of people left for those reasons. I mean, not like left permanently, but left for the time being.
Yeah, leave it until the game's been fixed to a certain extent that they'd enjoy it again coming back to it. Yeah, I can see that. I can see that.
Yeah. There was some crazy stuff like where people would hotkey constantly holding the game in windowed mode, and they would essentially be invisible. I mean, that's a very bad summation of it, but that's pretty much what it was.
That's rough. That is really rough.
Ridiculous stuff like that.
Nightblades have found their way into New World.
It's a Nightblade. I'm sure that's all the people who have... No,
yeah, everyone who Nightblade, all the gangsters from Cyrodiil would be using that.
Yeah. Exactly.
The other thing that I've noticed in the past couple of weeks is that we've lost 2 stream team members.
We have, yeah.
Hyperpixie dropped out, and so has Willowscale. They've both left the stream team.
Oh, Willowscale did? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
For New World?
No. I think she's pivoted over to League of Legends. She's always been pretty hardcore League of Legends, but I think she's lost. She hasn't streamed ESO for a long time, and she decided to make it formal, I think. But I mean, new games come along, people pivot over to other games. I guess, but they are constantly getting new stream team members. I don't think the overall numbers have dropped since last year, because they've gotten some new players in. But it is a sign that ESO doesn't hold people forever. It holds me forever. I'm ride or die, you know. But for a lot of people, it's not a constant hold.
Yeah. I think there's an aspect of it too where, and this isn't like putting anybody down who's not this way, but I think the people who are like Elder Scrolls, people who just like love the series a lot, I would say, this is based off of nothing, but I would say they stick around more just because of the new stuff that's coming out. And people who are in the game for, the PvP, or even socially, if PvP is moving elsewhere and social is moving elsewhere, it makes sense that you move. Yeah. Rough, but we'll see. We'll see how that game goes. I mean, it's pretty big right now. So I mean, it has potential for sure to be big, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, but I won't be leaving ESO, you can tell, because I'm even sitting in my new ESO chair.
I know. I was gonna see that. I saw that on stream. It looks. Yeah, that's an amazing chair. Is it? It's
Yes.
all leather.
It's fake leather. It's like polyurethane,
Yeah, but
whatever. Yeah,
it's not like cloth.
it's not cloth, no. Which means I
I like
can't sit
cloth.
on shorts during summer here because I just I generate so much
You're
moisture.
stuck.
I just feel a bit. I'd be a wash. I'd be sliding around all over the place. But it means I've got to wear long
In your
trousers
mouth.
all the time when I'm sitting in summer here. But yeah, it's pretty cool. I love the Ouroboros behind my head.
Yeah,
It has been
it's cool
commented
looking.
on at work when I've been doing Zoom calls from work from home.
Oh, it is. They better love it.
Yes. But yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
anyway,
it's cool.
Skyrim.
Yes,
Let's talk
Skyrim.
Skyrim.
Yeah, yeah. Let's talk about it. It's, man, it's it's like it's like when I first. I mean, it's not exactly like when I first picked it up, but it's
Mhm.
pretty damn close.
So
It's
it's
just so
really
good.
that a resurgence of excitement and connection for you, yeah.
Honestly, it really is. I would say, and this might not be an opinion everyone has. All I had to do was buy the digital upgrade because I have purchased Skyrim way
Hmm.
too many times.
Yeah, yeah.
And the survival mode is by itself worth the cost of the upgrade. Just the survival mode alone. And there's like hundreds of other mods that come with it.
Yeah, yeah.
But I know you can get it for free on the mod store. I actually did play with it a little bit. Like when I was playing Skyrim, like maybe like last year, earlier
Hmm.
last year. But there's something about this that's slimmed down, it's simple, and it's like
Mm.
fully integrated, and you don't have to worry about the mod crashing.
Yeah,
The mod crashing, It's just it's so good. I mean, food has purpose now, where it really was just to build health and
yeah, yeah.
get your attributes up.
Hmm.
You have to make food. You have to. I noticed that your carrying capacity is really impacted a lot more now, which is awesome. Um, Sleeping has impact. You're encouraged to stop into taverns and stuff like that. It's so much more immersive, and that's like what I've always been looking for with Skyrim. And God, it's amazing. Yeah,
Hmm. Hmm.
I've been playing it. I played it for well, I started this new playthrough. My definitive one. I started it last night, and I played for maybe I want to say I played for 8 hours, and I have not gotten out of Riverwood, and I just barely went to Whiterun because I was just doing so much stuff. I had to stop
Hmm.
everywhere.
Hmm.
You can't fast. There's no fast travel either
Yeah,
with
yeah.
this survival mode.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh, it's wonderful. I love it so much.
That's cool. I feel the same way about Fallout 4 survival mode. I don't play any other mode as soon as I
Yeah.
was able to play Fallout 4 survival mode. Same thing, no fast travel. You've got to eat, you've got to
Oh,
craft your medicines, you've got to do a lot more, and it's really the best way to be immersed in the game. So
yes.
it's really cool that you're enjoying it. I've yet to do a Skyrim run through with it. Um, I just haven't played much Skyrim over the past couple of years.
Yeah.
But
It's a 10-year-old game.
I'm planning to get back into it. Although I am going to be modding. There's one
Yeah.
specific mod I want to get that's pretty popular. It's just released this year. It's giving it more modern third person combat essentially,
Oh
animations
wow.
and combat movement. It's to make it feel like a normal, like a more modern action RPG. Proper tracking, proper targeting when you're in third person. Because I've played so much ESO, that
Hmm.
third person combat style it's so ingrained in me now. Going back to Skyrim's first person has been a little bit problematic for me.
Hmm.
So obviously I still do it when I'm being an archer, when I'm doing quest stuff. But for the melee combat, I'd
Yeah.
quite like to have that third person view. And the way that it's currently implemented in the base game is a little bit clunky. Um,
Yeah, I would totally agree. That's the one thing that was hardest to get back
mm,
used to because
yeah,
obviously I play an archer character and yeah, you can't do third person archery in
no,
Skyrim.
no.
It's impossible.
So
Yeah.
I've always been. I mean, Skyrim's. I say it was my first Elder Scrolls game. I've got such deep love for it.
Hmm.
I did an almost complete playthrough on Xbox before I switched to doing PC gaming between
Nice.
2015 and 16. But I never actually did a full playthrough, and I still haven't done one on PC. So I need to get back to it, just for just for my lore credibility. I think. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. One thing that I am finding myself doing, which I wish I didn't do, but I can't help it, but it's just because I know too much about the game, is because I don't collect every book, but I read every book that I see because I know, you either get a quest from some books, you get a boosted skill line.
Yeah, yeah.
So I find myself so the other night I was ransacking Dragon's Reach, which is Jarl Balgruuf in Whiterun's his castle or
Yeah,
his
yeah.
longhouse, and I was ransacking it I was just looking for golds, and because I have to manage my inventory because it's such more impacted with survival mode. But I probably spent 2 hours just clicking A on my controller and just reading a book, getting out of the book, and clicking A. I just was reading every book, and I couldn't stop. Like I was like, well, what if I get the one that's good for bows? I think it's called like Thief or Black Arrow or something like that. And what if I get the ones that's like Red Eagle Sword? And it's like I have to do it. But that's more of an addiction kind of thing, I guess. But I wish I didn't know that books had things, and actually would be able to discover them freshly again. But
I did
yeah,
actually go back and check my single Skyrim mod on Nexus.
Oh yeah.
I haven't looked at it in a while. I didn't have any more comments since I last looked like 6 months ago. But I do have a lore book mod on Nexus. It might even be up on Bethnet. My Fallout mod's up on Bethnet.
Okay, I was just gonna ask you if it's on Bethnet for Xbox.
Check.
I need to look at that.
I'll need to check.
Actually, I was gonna say I'll look at it right now too. Do you know where you find, or obviously, where do you find the book?
It's in the College of Winterhold, in the library.
Okay.
I thought of the best place to put a book in the whole game, and it's beside the Grumpy Librarian, the Grumpy Orc Librarian. Where else would you put a book?
Yeah.
So
honestly,
it's there.
It's there. Oh, so you're saying the book's there, not the mod's there?
Yeah, the book's there. The book's there. Yeah. Let me just.
What's the mod called?
I'll find it on Nexus just so I can.
Okay. I'll search it. I have it up. But talking about the mods too, I modded my game just very little. I just made the characters look more beautiful, and good. And I think I have just some UI mods. I made, since I am a bow primarily on everything, I just did some quality of life bow mods where it's like faster draw, and like a couple of, like, instead of having the quiver be on the back, I put it on the side, on the hip, like it's like real to be more immersed. Yeah, but that's just like a little quirk that I enjoy. And then I have the world map where it's just fully uncovered, like where you can see the whole world map. There's no clouds over anything.
Well, that's cool. I get a lot out of environmental mods in Skyrim. It can really make a big difference how the game feels.
Yeah.
So yeah, I can see why that's appealing. I mean, there's always the water mod everyone seems to put on. The water textures and things. I tend to just go for safe for work body texture mods and facial texture mods. I do safe for work ones in case I ever want to stream it, because there are a lot of not safe for work body texture ones that you can't stream, obviously.
Yeah, definitely. That's what I do too. I try to be as immersive as possible, and I don't think Bethnet lets you have anything too crazy.
No, it doesn't.
Unfortunately,
it doesn't.
for some people.
It does not. All right, so I've found my way to the Beth website, and
Okay.
when you're a mod author, when you look in the mod page, you can actually, there's a separate section for you to find your own mods.
Oh wow. Okay.
Let's see. It's under my mods. Where is it? Ah, there we go. No,
But yeah, it's been a.
it's not up in BethNet. I'll have to put it up for you.
Oh no. Okay, yeah, put it up for me and try to if you can do it for Xbox One.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah.
Um,
It's when I used to mod, I tried to make sure that I did mods that used game assets and not anything additional, because then you can do for both consoles and for PC. Because
okay, good.
PS4 doesn't let you import new items or
Assets.
resources assets. Yeah, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, besides that, like it's just been Skyrim's been really good. I'm really curious. Oh, I did actually do one of the quests. Um, I don't know if I really want to spoil it, but it was one to get the Bow of Shadows, which is Nocturnal's
Mm-hmm.
artifact, I
Mm-hmm.
believe. Um, the Bow of Shadows is fucking good. The enchantment is so good, and I got it, and I'm only level 7. And yeah, I don't think I'm gonna need another bow for the rest of my playthrough. Just trying to play like a, I'm just trying to play like a, just general hunter that she
Mm-hmm.
just stumbles into everything. But the bow of shadows, man, oh, it's so good. It was a very short quest to get it, but it
Mm-hmm.
was a fun one.
Excellent.
Yeah,
I
and
was.
there's a few other that are like that too.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm curious as what this the big one that everybody's talking about is the Ghost of the Tribunal one. I'm not sure if that's just armor, but I saw the Alexia's mask, her face snake queen mask.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my god, I like need it so much. I love it.
Yeah, no, that looks fantastic. It's really, I mean, they've done a really good job, I think, of taking the armors from Elder Scrolls 3, and the ones that they're reminiscent to the ones that they replicated in ESO, because we got the Ordinator ones, the recent one that was an
Yeah.
event drop.
Hmm.
That was very strongly reminiscent of Elder Scrolls 3, and they've done the same thing with the Skyrim mod and Creation Club. It
Yeah.
looks pretty cool.
Yeah, it does. And they have this cool. I haven't done anything with it yet, but they have like an actual pet mod where you can like have pets, and I,
Yeah,
I don't
yeah.
know if there's like a vendor.
I've got
Yeah,
that one.
you
I've
know.
got that one from the Creation Club. So you can have your goat that can carry your
Yeah,
burdens, as well as Lydia
I was gonna
that
get the goat.
carries your
Yeah.
burdens. You can have a rabbit.
Yeah, I was
You can
gonna
get a
get the goat.
rabbit that carries your burdens. That's a really cute one.
Oh, that's great. I was thinking I want to get a fox. I thought that was kind of appropriate for like a
Hmm.
hunter.
Hmm. Yeah.
Because I saw a fox on the screenshots. But yeah, I thought that was fun. I did prep for it. I got the color and I got a pack for it ready and my
I
follower.
think you've got to get some carrots to get the rabbit. You've got to get some bait to essentially get to attract it to appear. I think I seem to remember having to do that
Okay.
for the rabbit. I had to get some carrots, and I had to find a specific location in game that had carrots somewhere so that I could get them. Um,
Oh, it's like a
and
special carrot for the special NPC.
I think it might have been a special location. There's a little alchemy
Okay.
hut in one of the that's in game somewhere. I can't remember exactly where it's south of, but it's always a shack I seem to come across, and there's always alchemy reagents around there, and I'd always just plunder it all. But then when I got this Creation Club content mod add-on, I had to go back there with the carrots to find the rabbit that could be used to carry my burdens, so that was fun.
Imagine a rabbit carrying 230 iron ingots.
Here, have my dragon bones.
Your dragon bones, yeah, your dragon seals, yeah. Uh, yeah.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, I'm excited to explore more. I mean, there's so many more. There's horse armor, there's
Yeah, and it's
wild
free.
horses apparently.
The horse armor's free. Um,
Right.
yeah,
Free.
even if you haven't bought the, it's not part of the standard upgrade for the special edition, and you don't even have to pay for the anniversary edition. It's just in the Creation Club store. It's zero Todd bucks, just to get the dwarven and the iron horse armor. I got those yesterday actually. The iron one looks
Oh,
pretty
nice.
cool.
Okay.
The other ones looks a bit too Disney princess fantasy style, but
Yeah.
the iron one the steel one looks pretty good.
Yeah. I'm hopefully gonna get that soon. I have to save up for getting a horse because man, if you're not cheating with gold doesn't come easy.
No,
It's hard.
no. I remember being ridiculously annoyed when my horse died once because I knew I'd just have to grind
Oh,
some more gold to get another one. I was furious.
Yeah, I would be.
Absolutely furious.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's pretty much. I mean, I'm still slogging through it. It's not like it's a new or anything. So I'm just definitely taking my time and trying to do the side quests and
Mhm.
stuff. And
Mhm.
yeah, it's a good time. My Britain.
Yeah, I've tended to go. My first playthrough when I was doing it on Xbox, I did a Nord because I didn't know any better. Because I
Hmm.
thought I'm Skyrim, I should be a Nord. But now I normally go.
Right,
Now I always go Imperial when I do playthroughs.
Imperial.
Mm.
That was my second choice. And for some reason I always hated Bretons, but now I'm apparently like that's my character that I feel represents me the best. So
Mhm.
I just chose a Breton again. But man, that it's a 25%. I think 25% magica resistance, and you know
Mm.
those glass cannon mages that hit you really hard at the early levels. It really helps a lot, and you get dragon skin as the special like ability that you get, so
Oh
you can
wow. Okay.
um not be damaged. It reduces 50% of damage for a certain like a few minutes. It's really good.
That's pretty buffed. Jeez, that's
Yeah,
excellent.
it's it's really good. I didn't know that choosing, but I usually just choose races based on like what I like.
The aesthetic,
But
yeah.
that was yeah, but that was really a nice surprise
Mhm.
because man, those I mean, you just pop into a cave and you have like a bunch of bandits with whatever, like two-handers and archers and stuff, and
Mhm.
then you have that one that's just like a frost mage that just shoots you with the frost bolts, and
Yep.
oh,
Ice
they think they kill
shards
her.
in
Ice
nasty
shards.
places. Yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I could go on and on about Skyrim, but oh man, it's just so good. It's if you already own it and you're contemplating getting the $20 upgrade, I say just do it. $20, it's well worth it.
Mm. There's a lot of content. There's a lot of fantastic content. There's a couple of great player homes. Eleanor
Oh,
did some
yes,
amazing player homes for that for the Creation Club, and
yes,
I've got the one that's the Mirwatch or whatever, the one in the north, and the one just down beside Whiterun. Those are my go-to player homes when I do Skyrim playthroughs.
yes. I went by the Whiterun one, and I'm so excited. There's like, I mean, I don't even know how many there are. But I was surprised that there was three, and I think
Mhm.
there's like five or six that are in the mod or in the game now.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and I'd say
I'm
player
excited.
homes are always one of the things I used to mod in with
Mm.
Nexus mods, and 50% chance of having uh, location cell glitch bugs that would crash the game.
Right.
But when they're Creation Club housing player homes, you know that it's going to be completely fine. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's why I
integrated.
like them. Yeah.
Yeah. And one other thing I want to mention too, the graphical upgrade, it's it's great. There was like a distinct graphical upgrade because I was literally playing Skyrim the night before
Mhm.
the update, and I'm streaming it on the Xbox cloud gaming service that
Yeah,
they
yeah.
have,
Mhm.
and so I was able to jump right in as soon as it went live, and I noticed a definite change with the fluidity of movements and like a move into like the animations and stuff, and just increased better graphics. It was crisper. So
Mhm.
I don't know if they did something specific
They
for
have done something. They've done a
that,
lot
but
in the back end. I think using
okay.
different version of Visual Studio or some fundamental programming upgrade, and it actually caused a lot of mods to a lot of older mods to not work. I think Inigo was having problems because
Oh, really?
it the mod was taking too long. Well, the game was giving information faster than it was used to, and
Hmm.
as a result, it was assuming it was getting no response and it was crashing. But it was because the game was responding
Oh,
so
jeez.
rapidly because they played done a lot of back end work relative to how it used to be. I
Wow.
think so. It
Poor
makes sense
Inigo.
that it feels more fluid because I think a lot of the
Yeah.
they've done a lot of background work on it.
Yeah. You can tell, or you can feel it. It feels really really good.
Cool,
Yeah.
very cool.
Hmm.
Hmm. Well, shall we move on to our to the main course?
Yeah. We can move
Give us
on.
our
We're gonna
steaming
be
stew of lore.
Yes, the hot stew of lore that'll give you back 230 warmth and
Yes.
yeah,
Good
all
food
that.
buff.
All that. Yes, that's right. I mean, well, we're gonna kind of be talking about Skyrim stuff in this Tamriel Obscura. It's not necessarily that obscure, but it is something that I think gets glossed over a lot inside the game of Skyrim, um, and just kind of in general. It's not what we're going to be talking about is the um, Third Aldmeri Dominion, the rise of the Thalmor, kind of touch on the Great War.
Okay.
And as we know, this all goes into the time of Skyrim,
Yeah.
which
Yeah.
is
Sets up
settled
the major
right.
conflict and between
Yeah,
the cool. Sounds great. Looking forward to it.
yeah, exactly. Sets you up right in the middle there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I was going to start off with a question about, or to you, what do you, so more in a general sense, when you hear Thalmor, when you hear the Thalmor, when you see, a Thalmor Justicar dressed up in front of you, what are your initial feelings? What are your thoughts?
To draw my sword.
Right?
I mean, obviously, it's
You
Skyrim.
see,
They're a major antagonist. So it's that was always my first feeling with the film. They were the enemy. They were fomenting revolt. They were pulling the strings. They were causing all the upset in Skyrim as a political gain. And so I always had a strong antipathy towards them. So my first thoughts with Thalmor are antagonistic thoughts.
yeah, take him out, kill him, maybe take him off the side of the road into a grassy area, maybe throw their corpse down a river or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Pretty
I
much.
think I think a lot of people would empathize with that, and even the some of the Altmer's own kin, the other Altmer, or excuse me, the Thalmor's own kin, the Altmer, would also agree with you. Because where I'm going to start this isn't necessarily the beginning of the Third Aldmeri Dominion, but it's a really good and poignant place to start. Is the moment that the Oblivion Gates open in Somerset, specifically in Crystal near the Crystal Tower. There's this great book that I've talked about before. It's an in-game lore book in Skyrim called Rising Threat. It's from the perspective of a person, an Altmer named Lorenthal of Sunhold, and he is more or less an Altmeri historian during that time, and he recounts in the Rising Threat. He recounts watching the Crystal Tower fall essentially from the Daedric invaders. So the gates to Oblivion open up. These, anybody who's played Oblivion, and we all know that just the Daedra just invaded like crazy everywhere across Tamriel, and they really did a number to the Altmary's homeland, which is Somerset Isles, as we all know. And they just destroyed the Crystal Tower to the point where these Altmer in the area were driven and essentially cordoned into the Crystal Tower and surrounded by Daedra, which is really kind of, when you think of Somerset Isle, you think of, or at least I think of, this powerhouse, this old society that's withstood the test of time, and it just crumbling to Daedric forces, like that's crazy. So the first volume in the Rising Threat series that you can find in Skyrim is essentially about that. There's some very, very powerful, lines, I guess you could say, quotes in that are just, God, really makes me feel scared. I'm like in these poor Altmer shoes that are just like cowering and not sure what to do. So if these people, you have a people that has been devastated by the effects of the Daedra. You know, they're weakened. Their mentality's weakened because they've just been battered. You know, of course they're going to lean on these other, you know, their kinsmen who are saying, hey, you know, let's build up our empire back. We'll be great again. You know, let's do everything we can so nobody ever makes us feel on the back foot like we have.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the Thalmor. The Thalmor rise to power, and they don't necessarily rise to power, but they start to become a main political force right in the aftermath of the Oblivion Crisis.
Okay.
They're the saviors. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're the saviors, and we'll see this like savior mentality kind of throughout the reformation of the Aldmeri Dominion and the third Aldmeri Dominion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's essentially, I mean, the beginning of what we know as the Thalmor. They've always been kind of like a fringe political party, I guess you could say, during that time, pre-Oblivion Crisis. But man, when the Oblivion Crisis hit, they really struck and took the opportunity where it was left. So.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So going back to more generally in the Rising Threats, this author Lorenzo, he sees this, or actually, I'm not sure the gender. So they see this and they start to notice that this is happening, that these Thalmor are starting to just kind of take over. There was this other person that Lorenzo talks about called Rhinandor the Bold, who was one of, I believe they call him a seer, but he was like a very powerful mage that was one of the fighters against the Daedra at the Crystal Tower. And this Rhinandor, like, knew these Thalmor were bad news. Like, he knew. He was like, nope, these guys are bad news. So Lorenthal starts to kind of follow Rhinandor in that line of thought. And they decide to, or Lorenthal decides to liquidate all of his assets in Somerset and leave the Somerset Isles. He goes to Cyrodiil, and he tries to warn the Empire about the dealings of the Thalmor, because by this time they're already starting to have this. I'm just gonna say it. They started to have these like Nazi ideals of supremacy and whatnot. So
yeah,
that is, I think that's a fair parallel between the Thalmor.
Oh,
and
definitely. I'm pretty sure the game designers, writers certainly had that resonance in mind when they created them.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, they certainly make it seem like that, especially trying to purge the religion from Skyrim and everything like that, basically. So yeah, they I'm just reviewing my notes here really quickly. So like when the Thalmor were starting to rebuild the society, people were pretty much on board. And when I say people, I mean the general population of the Somerset Isles were pretty much on board, because of course the Thalmor was going to be doing good things to rebuild their society, and that's to get everybody up on their side. But Lorenthal, he notes that he says that with that simple act of gratitude, essentially building up society, we allowed a vile rot to seep into our homeland, to putrefy our once noble and distinguished civilization. So that's pretty powerful words.
It's pretty strong words, yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Lorenthal is not a fan of the Thalmor, that's for sure.
It's a twisted version of Praxis, really. It's taking all what Almer society was devoted to perfection in all of its forms and all of its expressions, and twisted it as a weapon to wield against the other races of Tamriel.
That's exactly right. What they started to do. So that person that I mentioned, the Rhinandor the Bold, one of the great heroes of the Crystal Tower, who defended the Crystal Tower valiantly against the Daedra. he was trying to become a political force in there as well, but quote unquote for the side of good, I guess, for the more better way. And the Thalmor turned on him and exiled him. And so this is when Lorenthal decides to do the very same, just to leave the Somerset Isles because the Thalmor are starting to do things and starting to usurp the society in ways that he didn't agree with. And like you said, turn that sharp society into a weapon rather than a strict code, I guess. And so he left. And the more interesting part of the story, I think, is that Lorenzo tried and tried and tried and tried to have an audience with some of the elder council members in the imperial elder council members, and to warn him or to warn them about the Thalmor and how much of a big threat that they're going to be, that they could be potentially become.
Yeah.
Because the Thalmor were conniving and they had things up their sleeves, which we'll definitely get into. But I thought it was just interesting that potentially, I mean, the Great War could have not happened if someone would have just given Lorenzo the time and actually paid attention to him. You know what I mean? Like, hey, watch out for these Thalmor guys. They're bad news, you know?
Yeah.
So he finally is able to speak with someone named High Chancellor Okado. Excuse me, no, I'm sorry. That's not correct. He did not speak with them. Sorry, I'm losing my notes a little bit here.
Right.
There was unrest going on in the Elder Council at this time as well. This was before Tiber Septim took the throne. Oh man, this is not correct. Oh yeah, no, this is right. I'm in the right time. Titus Mead. Sorry, Titus Mead is the emperor who seizes the crown eventually. This was after Martin Septim was gone and everything like that. There was an assassination of Urius Septim VII, and so also it was Lorenzo wasn't really able to get an audience with these folks because the empire was also going through some internal turmoil. And then we know that Titus Mead takes the crown, and then we get the Great War after that because Titus Mead is the current emperor. Wow, I really do know my stuff, but yeah. Titus Mead, early Fourth Empire, yes. So then as the empire's doing its thing, Lorenzo's trying to get a petition with the empire, the Elder Council to let them know what's going on. Thalmor are working their ways. They create a coup in Valenwood, as it might be pretty well documented. They gain allies in Valenwood in order to create chaos in with the Valenwood, the Bosmer in Valenwood, and end up gaining allies in that way. They also do the whole thing where with the Khajiit, where they do the moons. And they say the moons were gone, and they brought it back, and it's lying bullshit that they did to turn the Khajiits over onto their side. Excuse me, that's not correct. That's Elder Scrolls Online. No, it's not Elder Scrolls Online, but that's part. Wait, right? That's not correct. Hold on a second. That's not correct. Ignore what I said about the Khajiits. But they did do the thing in Valenwood where they turned the society and gained allies, which becomes really important because the access into Valenwood really allowed them to move their forces from Valenwood or through Valenwood into Cyrodiil.
It's essential. I mean, there's no way to make war with the Empire from the Somerset Isles.
Exactly, and that was one of the ways. So they attacked Cyrodiil through there, and then they did a joint attack, one in Hammerfell and one in Cyrodiil. So Hammerfell was for all intents and purposes, I'm pretty sure it was a naval attack, and then the Cyrodiil attack was overlay one.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think it's interesting that, I mean, it makes sense if you look at the map, because
Yeah.
the Thalmor can attack Hammerfell, it's right there. And then, but it's just interesting that they decided to attack Hammerfell. And I think it is to kind of, if we look at it from like an outside perspective, it's kind of saying that the Hammerfell was quite a threat to them, because man, those Hammerfell warriors were,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think they were not to be fucked with. And
Definitely not.
I think the Thalmor recognize that. Obviously, if we're looking at current day from Skyrim's perspective, they're still fighting the warriors from Hammerfell, because Hammerfell decided not to bend the knee, if you will.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, so the Great War happens. There's a lot of fighting, and the first thing that the Thalmor demanded before they incited this Great War was, well, the first thing that they did that incited the war was they dumped the heads of all the Blades members that were in Somerset and Valenwood into the courtyard into the Elder Council, because they did actually finally make an audience with someone from the Thalmor.
Mm-hmm.
And the terms were that pretty much what's in the White Gold Concordat, that they renounced Talos. God, there's some ridiculous ones in there. They renounced Talos. They disband the Blades, and demand tributes. The Emperor or the Thalmor, or the Empire must pay tribute to the Thalmor, which is kind of like, why? Why? They're not really. But yeah, and then of course seeing all the heads of the Blades, roll around them. The Empire, they declare war, and then that's when the Thalmor hit Hammerfell and it hits southern Cyrodiil.
Mm-hmm.
They cut off Bravil from supplies, and then if we move a little bit south, they completely take over Leyland. So obviously that's a strategic victory, because that's the only way in. That's really the only way into the Imperial City. If you
you control that waterway.
Water.
You've basically got a stranglehold over the Imperial City.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what it was. And so then it's just no surprise that they were able to get to a point where both forces were at a standstill. The war wasn't going anywhere, and they signed a treaty. Hammerfell was like, nope, not doing this.
Yeah.
So the fighting continued in Hammerfell. But the White Gold Concordat was signed, which was pretty much signed, and the demands that the Thalmor originally wanted were all met, which is very unfortunate. But yeah, that's pretty much where the story ends and where we pick up in Skyrim.
Yeah, it was a treaty that was designed to punish, extort, and subjugate.
Yeah.
Definitely
Absolutely.
a bad deal for everyone concerned, apart from the Thalmor.
Yeah, it's totally true. And the thing about Talos, them disbanding Talos worship, is it's more of a symbolic thing. I mean, I think it's kind of obvious. Apologies for stating the obvious, but it is a very symbolic thing, because the gods are mostly, for all intents and purposes, they're mostly elven gods, which were adapted way back when in the First Empire by Alessia, because the slaves only really grew up, like, people were born into the religion of their slave masters, which were the elves, and they had all the gods that we pretty much know as the 8 divines. And the 9th divine, Talos, was really the only singular human created god,
and a recent god as well.
And a recent god, yeah.
So it gave the idea that the races of the other races had the potential for godhood, whereas the elves were quite sure that they were the only ones that had that particular divine connection.
Yeah, exactly right. Because their rhetoric, whether it's true or not, and I would argue it's not true, but they always believe that they are of the gods. That the gods, they don't see them. The worship, and this is just speaking generally, the worship of the gods is really a dumbed down ancestor worship because they believe that the gods are their literal ancestors,
Yeah.
which
Mm-hmm.
they're really everybody's ancestors if you think about it.
Yeah.
So the elves are the same people as the humans, they're just different evolution essentially.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's fucked. And the Thalmor are very, very, you know, there's no redeeming quality about them, I think.
Yes. It's
Yeah.
like in the Elder Scrolls universe, the Dunmer said, "We're the most racist race in this realm," and then Thalmor said, "Hold my beer."
That's exactly right. Exactly right. Yep. The Thalmor definitely said, "Oh yeah,
Watch
hold my
this.
beer." Yep, you're totally right. Watch this. Yeah, they definitely do. And man, they're quick. The Great War was only 5 years, which I think is pretty short compared to some years in the Elder Scrolls universe. There was like a war at the end of the first era that was like 400 years or something like that. But there's some pretty big wars,
Mm-hmm.
pretty
Mm-hmm.
long wars, and I think a 5 year one is pretty telling. Um, but yeah, that's some other things I didn't go over that I really wanted to go over. Kind of fringe things.
Mm-hmm.
The We all know that right before the Oblivion Crisis, the Vardenfell the Red Year happened, which crippled and almost pretty much devastated the Dunmeri society.
Mm-hmm.
Also, the Arnesian War, which is the Argonians invading the homeland, invading from the south into Vardenfell, which I would argue is pretty justifiable war. But in the context of it, that really crippled the Dunmer,
Mm-hmm.
which me being kind of like a Dunmer file, I would argue that if the Dunmer didn't have so many blows hit to them, they still would have been part of the Empire.
Mm-hmm.
So man, maybe the Empire could have won.
It's an
I don't know.
interesting hypothetical.
Yeah.
Essentially, the Dunmer and the Altmer have got ancient antipathy, and you would have expected if, as you say, the Dunmer were part of the Empire, that as the Aldmer forces were forcing north from Valenwood, the Dunmer would have participated in trying to push them back, and it might have not been such a campaign of rapid dominance that the Altmer actually got.
Yeah, I think it could have been because, I mean, I like the thing that I like about, and the reason really kind of wanted to talk about the Great War. I really like military strategy and like alliances and
Mm-hmm.
things like
Mm-hmm.
that. And I mean, you have really what the Empire had during the Great War was the Empire, or the Cyrodiil, which the Cyrodiilic people were, generally a warring nation. You had Hammerfell, which was absolutely a warfare-based nation, and then you had High Rock, which was mostly merchants. I mean, you had some battle mages and stuff like that. There was actually some very skilled battle mages um, High Rock, as well as naval power, but I don't think it was anything compared to what the Thalmor had. So if
Mm-hmm.
you had
Mm-hmm.
another nation of warriors and tacticians and merchants, and I mean, man, that would have been a boom, I think.
Yeah. And with the attack on Hammerfell by sea, was that simply to keep them occupied there so that they wouldn't be able to defend Cyrodiil? Do you think?
That's a fantastic question.
Because
I think that could have been part
you
of it.
don't conquer a land with a naval campaign, but you can certainly pin them down and not essentially stop them from being able to sail to the defence of Cyrodiil, or indeed for their land forces to be free enough to stop defending their coastal towns and villages and actually go and aid the Empire.
I think you're totally right. Yeah, it's apparently reported that the Red Guards were disunited. So there was probably some Crown's
Oh,
Warbearers
yeah,
thing going on.
most likely.
So that's, yeah. So I mean, I think you're totally right in that. So it prevented them from unifying. It kind of hit them quickly and by surprise, and it kept them occupied at the shores. Yeah, that's very fair. Um,
So
yeah, it
The
says that they
Dunmer are
were
gone.
quickly over.
The Red Guard are essentially negated, and the High Elves just walk through Valenwood and up into Cyrodiil.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about the orcs because they're disjointed, very disjointed at this point. I mean, the Bretons and Cyrods are pretty much the same. I mean, it's the same. It would be this. It's like evenly matched against the Bosmer and Aldmer or Althmer. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's just an interesting time, and it's really like I said this before, and I'll say it again. Reading that Rising Threat book it's a fantastic read, and it shed a lot of light into the pre-Great War and pre-Skyrim era, where it's like this all could have been avoided if you just would have listened to this guy. Like, just think about it. And like,
well, it's also
yeah,
I mean, this is something that a lot of people didn't experience until they got did Elder Scrolls Online and did the Somerset storyline. A lot of people hadn't experienced what Onward Society was, other than their interactions with Thalmor and Skyrim. Um, and that book, from the sound of it, just basically gives you this different perspective of this nation of a race that are interested in themselves, obviously, but in the pursuit of perfection that was traumatized dramatically by the Oblivion Crisis. And it kind of makes sense for Dagon to do that, because Dagon's looking at Tamriel and thinking, okay, where are my major threats? Where are going to be the things? Who are the people that are coming back against me hardest? I better hit them hard. Better hit them first. And to take out the Altmer, to bring down the Crystal Tower, it's like completely crushing any potential resistance you get from them.
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really interesting that you say that you touch on that, because we do see them pretty much have these same kind of basic ideals in ESO in the second era during the second Aldmeri Dominion. So it's like, yeah, it's very, you can see how someone with the wrong mindset can turn that into what we see
Yeah, I
as
mean the wonderful thing in ESO is that you see this combination. The Thalmor that we know in Skyrim essentially have taken the worst parts of the Thalmor from the era of ESO and the Veiled Heritance of that era. It's like they've taken the racism of the Veiled Heritance and the superiority of the Thalmor and melded it into this like hideous love child of culture and society.
it's so true. Yeah.
I guess I mean
And one thing I want to touch on
that's
too.
sorry, just yeah, on you
No,
go.
no, no. You go, you go, you go.
Well, it's just
I thought you were going with your
the
thought.
question in Oregon. There's a question in Oregon where you're rescuing Khajiit and Bosmer from the in the Thalmor Academy that's been infiltrated by the Veiled Heritance. And the Veiled Heritance that are impersonating Thalmor in that academy are essentially the Thalmor that we know from Skyrim.
Yes, and it's so weird. I remember doing that, like thinking like, oh, the Thalmor, like okay, cool, Nazis. Let's go ahead, let's kill them, let's get them all. But it's so interesting because when you look at it, it's the Veiled Heritance that's these Thalmor ideals. It's not the actual Thalmor.
Yeah.
In this game.
Because in Iren's plan, because I think the Thalmor were dedicated to the Altmer, to the Almeri Dominion, to the ascendance of that as the dominant force in Tamriel. But under Iren, it was we recognise the need for our partner races. We recognise their strengths and their contributions, and as such, we will work with them as well as we can to ensure the Almeri Dominion succeeds. Whereas the Skyrim era Thalmor, it's everyone's shit. and we're just going to crap all over you, and you're going to do what you're told, and you can give us all your money.
And if we can't get what we want, we'll usurp your society and create chaos.
Yep,
yeah,
that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, and then I was gonna say too, the thing about the Khajiit and the moons returning, I was right in that. They're called the Void Knights. The moons were gone. The Thalmor lied and said, "Oh, we brought the moons came back," and the Thalmor were like, "Oh, that was us." And it really probably wasn't. I mean, I would say it definitely wasn't.
We
But
saved
yeah,
your society by
so
bringing the moons back. Honest, it wasn't completely
right,
unrelated
it
to
was
us. Yes.
totally us. I mean, that was us. That was us. That was us, right? Yeah, that was us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's just such a. I did like that they included the Thalmor in ESO because, well, okay, so I like that they gave Altmer, Altmer in general, more of a better disposition and a better rap than what we see in Skyrim, because that was really the only other time we see high elves,
Mm-hmm.
and another thing too is that there's this very less talked about rebellion that happened in Somerset during the time of the Thalmor seizing power and actually being in power.
Mm-hmm.
And that got stamped down pretty quickly as far as like the reports say. I will try to source this, but I cannot find the source right now. I just know that this is something I read.
Mm-hmm.
There was definitely a rebellion in the Somerset Isles, and you don't hear a lot about it, and it's not really written about much in lore books because, at least in my opinion, and from what I see, I think it's kind of like a genocide situation where it's like they killed a lot of their naysayers and a lot of the people who were in Thalmor or in Somerset Isles trying to overthrow them, kill their competitors.
Controlling dissent by extermination is a fairly drastic tactic.
Yeah, seriously. Messed up. So yeah, when you're playing your anniversary edition Skyrim playthrough, definitely you see Altmer on the street that's in Thalmor robes. I give you permission to take them out.
Yep.
Everyone.
I'll be in my nightingale armor doing a stealth archer as always.
Hell yeah.
With the bow perk that stuns them when you hit them. I love that bow perk.
Oh,
It's like when you get up
you're
to
gonna love
skill
this Bow
80 or 90 on the skill tree, and you just, even with the big nasty Draugr lords in the crypts, you just fire a bullet and they're incapacitated for a good few seconds. I love that perk. I love it.
Perilous? Oh, I do too. Perilous, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Almost as much as I hate
gotta...
the attack that the Draugr lords can do that disarm you, I've lost so many excellent weapons that way.
So that never happened to me ever in any of my playthroughs before, like my 5 playthroughs before. It happened to me for the first time, this one. I never had experienced that before, where I literally dropped my bow.
Yeah, and if it's in a particular part of a dungeon or a crypt, sometimes you just can't find it again. It's just,
right.
Where is it?
It's gone forever.
Oh, jeez. Reload save.
That's exactly. I was gonna say like just constant save, quick saving. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh
Definitely.
god.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that's pretty much my section. It's as tangential as it usually is.
It's cool. It's cool. Like I say, it's one. I played Skyrim and I played it as a Nord, and I just engaged with it my first playthrough just as a completely brand newcomer to ESO. I saw these weird cat creatures, saw playthroughs where people came across lizard creatures. What on earth is that all about? And then I thought ESO, because then I wrote my lore book, my Bosmer lore book for my mod, and it got me thinking about all the other races of Tamriel that I essentially had no contact with in my playthroughs. And I thought, okay, I have to do ESO. I have to get more lore from the different races.
Mm-hmm.
So that was one of the reasons I wanted to do ESO, is because I wanted to encounter the other races that are not front and center in Skyrim,
right,
and learn more about Tamriel. And the Altmer, they're front and center in the storyline, but they're not front and center in terms of you learning what the race is and what their culture is like.
Mm-hmm.
And it'd be like judging, to bring the Nazi analogy, it'd be to judge German society by the SS.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would exactly be like that. And it's almost like, I remember thinking that as well in Skyrim, because I would see Altmer shopkeepers or, just town citizens. And I would think, are you a secret? Like, are
Yeah,
you? But now I kind of see it as like, oh, they're probably a expat from Somerset who left because they fucking
because of the
hated
Thalmor.
the Thalmor too.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it was almost interesting if, like, the Thalmor would hate that more too, if they would, overturn a house and find it being a Thalmor, not a Thalmor sympathizer, the opposite of that, a Thalmor naysayer, and, hunt somebody down there. I don't know. That's what happened to Lorenzo though. He got taken and he got assassinated by some Thalmor agents, and he was a very storied historian in the Imperial City, or excuse me, in Cyrodiil, and the rising threats at the very end of that book. There's a note from Imperial historian that said Lorenzo paid with his own money to get these series of books published and spread out as far and wide as he could. So it's interesting, and a good Lorenzo of Sunholz. It's a good guy, one of the good ones.
One of the good ones. Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. That's pretty much all that I have there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, so let's move on to, we've had our stew, our hearty lore stew. I'm gonna sprinkle some alchemical dressing on top of a dessert for you here, as we move over into Cynical Alchemy. So I wanted to do a reagent that, because I spend so much time in ESO, I spend so much time making potions in ESO, I often tend to fixate on the reagents that we can get in ESO. But I've chosen some reagents that aren't part of alchemy in ESO. They're actually very widespread in alchemy in the main core games. So I thought it was appropriate that I pick a reagent that you'd learn more about in Skyrim than you ever would in ESO. So I've picked Atronach salts as my reagents for this episode today. So for those that don't know, Atronach salts are the residue that's left after you've killed either a flame, a frost, or a storm Atronach, which are quite powerful creatures, Daedra. Very much Daedra that you don't associate with intelligence or self motivation. They're not like Dremora or anything like that, but they're kind of like elemental creatures, imbued with the power of either flame, ice, or lightning. We use these creatures, or we encounter them a lot in ESO, but there is nothing that you gain from killing them that is used in alchemy in ESO, but there is in Skyrim, there is in Oblivion, there is in Morrowind, there is even in Blades. These reagents exist in 4 other games, but not in ESO. So in game, you'd see them in Skyrim. You'd normally associate them with a wooden bowl with some powder in it. It's reddy orange for fire salts, bluish white for frost salts, and kind of dark grey powdery void salts. Void salts are what you get from storm Atronachs. Frost salts are what you get from frost Atronachs, and fire salts are what you get from flame Atronachs. So in each case, you kill them and you can get this thing, but equally there's lots of this stuff out in the world, in various places, and you use it in various different ways in game. Now they've all got very similar properties. So they give you resistance. So funnily enough, the fire salts give you resistance against flame. The frost salts give you resistance against cold or frost damage. The void salts give you resistance against magic in general, which is quite a curious one.
I think it's curious that it's called void salts and it's from storm Atronachs. I don't associate void at all with storm Atros.
No. If I was going to pick an Atronach, it would be an air Atronach, but you don't get those in the main games. You get those in ESO, but you don't get them in Skyrim.
True.
So yeah, void salts give you resistance to magic. They also give you weaknesses. So fire salts give you weakness to frost. Frost salts give you weakness to fire. And interestingly, void salts give you weakness to shock damage, which is the complete opposite of what you'd expect.
Yeah.
But those are those are the primary properties of these alchemical reagents when you're making potions. They all also restore magicka, which again is not unexpected because these are essentially residues of quite magical beings.
Yeah.
Now, in terms of as well as potions, interestingly, void salts are actually used as a component when you improve Nightingale armor. That was quite an interesting
Wow.
crafting aspect of them. So normally when you improve your armor at the forge, sometimes there's odd ingredients, and in this case, for Nightingale armor, you need to use void salts. But they're
How
not.
weird. That's so bizarre.
Yeah, it's again, it's not something you'd expect with stormy things. You'd expect it with Oblivion things to be in Nightingale
Yeah.
armor, but not the void salts. But that's the way it is in the game. Now oh, sorry, I just threw down some caltrops there in your
Wow.
library.
All
Do
over my
excuse
library.
me. Do excuse me. At least I didn't drop an ultimate.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, and I could have dropped a Storm Atronach. That would have been
You could
appropriate
have.
because this is my Sork.
Appropriate.
Anyway, for those who are listening, I just turned back up to Livia's house in Elder Scrolls Online and threw down some caltrops. Miri will be very upset with me.
You will be very upset.
Now, so as I said, these in game they appear at a variety of static locations, and there are some quests where I'm sure many people have had to find these static locations because it's a lot easier to find in world in a static location than try and kill lots of Atronachs to get this stuff. But equally, as well as potions, and the use I mentioned for Nightingale armor, there is actually a location in Skyrim that I did not know about until I started researching this, mainly because I haven't done much College of Winterhold stuff. But there is in the College of Winterhold a location called the Midden, which is there's a apparition NPC that you interact with that used to be a powerful mage that went off the rails and tried to get too powerful. But in the Midden there is something called the Atronach Forge, and at this location you can use materials to summon Atronachs or create Atronachs, or to create materials imbued with the elemental powers of the Atronachs.
Oh, wow, that I didn't know.
So
That's cool.
this is completely new to me. So this is lore that it's like I've never been to Blackreach in Elder Scrolls V, but I have
wow.
obviously spent a lot of time there in Elder Scrolls Online. It's essentially a big crafting station for doing cool stuff. That's what it is in Skyrim essentially. There's recipes for summoning scrolls. There's recipes for all sorts of stuff where you use the salts, the Atronach salts to do things. And also at this Atronach Forge, you can make Atronach salt. Now this is a little bit of an interesting thing from a lore perspective for me, but for your information, you can make Atronach salts with normal salt and gemstones. So if you've got ruby and normal salt, you can make fire salts. If you've got sapphire and normal salt, you can make frost salts. And if you've got amethyst and normal salt, you can make void salts. And there's actually a lore text associated with this information and this location. It's a letter written to a young Dunmer who's on their way to study at the College of Winterhold, and it's written by their uncle, who is presumably also spent time at the College of Winterhold, informing him of this location and the kind of things you can do there. So there's an actual in-game text that connects up with the Atronach Forge. So potions, armor modification, and making Atronach things like staves and all sorts of things that you can do at the Atronach Forge. So that's how you use them in-game. And they've all got similar properties, resistances and weaknesses and magicka boosts. But as well as the in-game use that your player would actually use them for, there are quests associated with Atronach salts. And as you'd expect for a reagent quest, the majority of them are fetch quests. Now, interestingly, there is a fetch. This is the only time it appears in ESO. there is a fetch quest for fire salts in ESO, and if you remember, this is part of the tutorial quest for the Morrowind chapter.
I didn't do the tutorial one in
because you meet Naryu there. This is the first time I met Naryu because I hadn't done the packed storyline before.
Oh, wow.
Naryu gets you to find some fire salt and some kindle pitch. And for those of you that aren't chemists, kindle pitch is essentially materials derived from fossil fuels. It's like aromatic hydrocarbons. They're very flammable. She gets you to get fire salts and kindle pitch to set aflame the slaver ships, which is where you start the Morrowind chapter on this little island, the Slaver Island. Sorry, it's not the only time that fire salts appear in ESO. There is an emote that you can purchase from you can get from Crown Crates.
Yeah, I have it.
Yeah, the fire salt emote, where you just take some from a bowl and sprinkle it. So those are the only two places that fire salts appear in ESO. Interestingly, the symbol for the fire salt, the icon for fire salt, is orange powder in a square bowl, which is different from the orange powder in a circular bowl, which is what we all know. Yes, there you go. And it's different even from what you've got in your hand right there in your character. So that's the circular bowl you expect from Skyrim. But the quest icon, for that material is in a square bowl, for some reason.
Really? I'm looking at it right now.
Really weird.
Oh yeah, that's exactly like the Skyrim one.
Yeah.
How weird.
Yeah. So fire salts are really cool. Now Skyrim has there aren't many fetch quests in Oblivion or Morrowind for these materials. Skyrim's got most of them, and there's fetch quests for each of the 3 different types of salts. Now, the first time I came across fire salts in game in Skyrim was when I went to Riften, and I had to help Balamund mend his forge. So this is a quite. I mean, I think everyone does this quest. Balamund's forge is very useful to be able to access, and he asks you to get 10 portions of fire salt so you can get his forge up to the temperatures that he needs to do the work that he needs to do. So that was the first time I came across fire salts. Right? Yeah, no, it's not the Sky. It's not the Sky Forge. That's in Whiterun. Balamund's forge is just a normal forge. It's just off the market. You know, the market where you've got to steal things and really meet Brynjolf. So it's just off the market. And interestingly, apparently, you've got to fix his forge before he'll let you marry him. I didn't know this.
Wow.
I didn't know this. Apparently, if you want to marry Balamund, you need to fix his forge first. You need to light his fire.
How appropriate. You need to light his fire and just get things for him like a doting wife would do, I guess.
A little bit about that. It's yeah. So that's the main fetch quest for fire salt. For void salts, there's a quest called Salty Sea Dogs. It's in Dawnstar. There's an inexpert and naive ship's captain who gets lots of salt from his crew, but has lost some void salts, and you've got to go and collect them. And they're actually called finely cut void salts. It's the only time that the void salts are referred to as anything slightly different in the series of games. But although there's absolutely no difference in game with the properties of this material, it does exactly the same thing. But it's
finely cut has some drug connotations in my opinion.
It also has some connotations in terms of how it could be used, and I'll come on to that a bit later actually.
Okay.
Now what else? There's another quest in the Dragonborn DLC. There's a Thalmor alchemist in Tel Mithryn called Elenia Mothrin, who asks you to get a rare alchemy reagent as a fetch quest, and void salts is one of the potential things that she asks you to get.
Okay.
Frost salt's probably got the least number of quests. The least number of involved quests. There's 2 of them. One is you take Farengar asks you to take some to Arcadia in Whiterun. Farengar the mage.
Yep, I did that. Yeah.
Arcadia, who keeps telling you you're going to die, so that you'll buy some stuff from her. And
Silvier's looking sick.
Yeah. So Farengar asks you to take some to Arcadia, and it's just a simple reward. There is in Kynesgrove, there's a mage called Dravinia, Stoneweaver, who asks you to get some frost salts to help her keep control of the temperature in the mine that's there. So frost salts for Arcadia, frost salts for Dravinia, and and that's essentially as much the quest involvement there is for the three types of Atronach salts. Mostly fetch stuff. A little bit of insight into the properties or potential properties, because fire salts obviously you'd expect it to be useful in either getting your forge to a higher temperature or starting the forge more effectively. It kind of makes sense. The frost salts controlling the temperature of an environment in a confined environment. That also kind of scans with what you'd expect for a material like frost salts. The void salts, the finely cut void salts. Well, this really connects more with how reactive things can be when they're of smaller size. Flour is not a very flammable material, but when you've got flour dust, you ignite it, you can actually create a very, very nasty explosion. When you finally divide a material, it becomes more potent in terms of its ability to be ignited. So finely cut void salts would actually be more effective in doing certain things. But the fact that it doesn't actually give you anything more potent when you use it in game is a little bit of a missed opportunity, I think. But it would actually, in a real world context, result in a more reactive material. So the reason I say I like to find simple fetch quests, there's nothing interesting there, but quests where you can actually connect up a little bit with the material itself, its properties and what it could be used for. I like those kind of quests with the alchemy stuff, but you don't often get many of them. Most of them are just not standard fetch quests.
Get this ingredient so I can make this potion.
Yes, exactly. That's essentially the extent of it.
Yeah.
All right, so I've gone over the uses in game. I've gone through the quests that are associated with it. There is lore. There are lore texts that could mention it, the various different Atronach salts. But very few of them actually go into anything in any more detail than this will make things hot or this will make things cold. But there are some where it's a little bit non-standard. There is actually a quite a long description of these types of things in. You might actually own this. It's the Agents and Reagents, the Bounty of Mundus. It's one of the tie-in books that you can actually buy, a real physical book that you can buy that's sold by ZeniMax to accompany the games. It's and in that there's a list of 24 chapters where it goes through different materials and their properties.
Okay.
So if you want to expand your actual real world library, you might want to track that one down.
Yeah, I'm actually looking that up right now.
So it's talked about, all three of them are talked about in that book. Fire salts are described as glowing red crystalline rocks. Void salts are described as pulsing ash-like sludge. And another reference point, blackened crystalline sludge that is unpleasant to touch. Now, frost salts are described as wet to the touch without melting. So some interesting background lore for what this material would actually look like visually and feel like tactilely, in a tactile manner, if you were handling it. Other than that, which was I think the most satisfactory lore thing that I could find on them, there's in-game text and fragments that suggest uses for them. A lot of them are actually suggest consuming them, which I find quite disturbing. And there was one.
Yeah, consuming a hot rocks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. There was one text, and I'm glad I actually did a bit of due diligence in this because I found it on the Imperial City Library. I was reading it, I was going, are they using void salts to get drunk? Because it was a recipe for a drink that's used at a wake. And you'd normally associate things to be drunk at a wake to get pissed. But then I actually found the reference to it again on the Elder Scrolls wiki. And this was a little bit more information. It was a drink specifically designed to kill the attendees at a wake.
Oh wow.
And that sounds pretty weird.
That's morbid.
This is like me mistaking the moon sugar thing with Nightshade, but so I'm glad I actually did some extra digging in this case. So this was designed to kill wake attendees, but it was designed to kill wake attendees for a heroic funeral, a heroic person's funeral, and it was designed so that these people would accompany them to the afterlife. So
so kind of like a pharaoh situation
exactly.
with the tomb and okay.
So it was a drink designed to allow, well, I don't know if it was done with consent, but
sure.
It was designed to kill a lot of people at a wake so that they would then be companions to the other person in the afterlife.
Wow.
So that was
That was
disturbing.
with you said that was void salts that did that?
Void salts in that case, yeah. A sacrificial
Void salts.
beverage made from void salts.
Wow.
But how that
Lovely.
connects to the properties in game, I don't see it. I don't see a strong
Yeah.
connection, but it's definitely part
Unless
of
it's
that.
an overdose of something,
I
I guess.
could be, but actually, this is a lore fragment from Elder Scrolls 3. It's from
Oh, wow.
Morrowind. It's called
Huh.
Hanen's Wake, lore book from Elder Scrolls 3.
Wow.
Now, there are some references in ESO. There's a benign one where apparently somebody creates, it's from a book called Teas and Tysense for Aches and Pains. And this is in the Morrowind chapter of ESO. And there's a beverage that's describing using some fire salts to help mend bones. And again, I see no real connection between the properties of fire salts and anything to do with restoring bones, but there it is nonetheless. They do have a slightly better. They've got an ointment they're making with some fire salts in this thing, or they're creating a liquid material that can be used to cure skin diseases. And I can imagine you could create with fire salts an effective exfoliant to remove dead skin. I can imagine that. So I'm quite comfortable with that potential use for it. But the other one, when I'm thinking about a tea to mend bone, I immediately think of the Thor meme with the questioning face. Really? You know,
Yeah.
it doesn't
Really?
it doesn't fit with me. But the skin one did.
To mend bones? No.
Yeah. Now there is one other quite lore appropriate reference in Gratwood in ESO, where you find a letter or a report written by an Imperial weapon master or a siege manager, where they're talking about fire salts, and you'd expect if you're using siege weapons to cause flame damage, you'd want fire salts. So yeah, that all seemed to scan pretty well.
Yeah.
So those were the major lore references in text that I could find that actually added something a little bit different that wasn't just you make this with this. So there's a couple of really peculiar ones there. I'd say the physical book, the real world book where you can read the materials of Mundus, I thought that was quite interesting lore back material in terms of the texture of the stuff. But that was a definite value add, if you like, to the lore. And some of the rest was really quite curious. All right, so I've done properties in game. I've done uses in game. I've done quests, and I've done lore fragments. As always, I try and find some way to connect the alchemy reagents to the real world. Now, and this would then obviously bring back that Thor meme. Really? How are you going to do that?
Right.
How are you going to do that with Atronach salts? Where do you get Atronach salts in the real world? Well, see, I know you can't. I can't summon an Atronach and destroy it with an axe and then just rummage through its remains and see if I can extract some stuff. But there are real world materials that could act like these different salts. So I've tried to come up with 3 potentials for the 3 different salts that are actually quite realistic. But equally, I wanted to immediately poo-poo the I mentioned earlier on in the Atronach Forge that you can make Atronach salts with real salt and basically gemstones. Now I mentioned the fact that salt can't do any of these things. It's salt is sodium chloride. It's an electrolyte. It's used in your body as an electrolyte. It's a potential component in electrochemistry experiments, and that's as close as you'll ever get to sodium chloride being anything connected to current, charge, voltage, or sparkiness. Okay, that's as close as you
They're
get.
kind of void salts. So kind of like void salts, but not at all like void salts.
Exactly. They ain't frosty, and they ain't flammable. So salt cannot be in the real world anything connected to creating anything like these things. And as for the gemstone thing, that's just standard magic gemstone nonsense, because ruby and sapphire are the same thing. It's literally exactly the same mineral, but with just a little bit of difference in terms of the impurities that are in it. Ruby has chromium ions, which change the electrical properties, which allow it to give out appear red. sapphire has iron and titanium instead of the base material. The base material, which is aluminium oxide. Um, corundum is what people would know it as, and corundum's not worth anything because it's just clear and it's not anywhere near as nice as diamond. But you take corundum and you finely disperse some chromium or some iron titanium through it, suddenly you've got incredibly valuable gemstones. So the colour doesn't come from the base material, it comes from the impurities. And that's a little bit of colour chemistry for you there. But again, there's nothing.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
There's nothing innately magical or frosty or fiery or anything about these things. It's just you've got a little bit of an impurity and it makes it colourful. That's it. So in terms of the game designers trying to think, well, what do we have in game that players could mix together and we could feasibly get something that looks like fire salts or frost salts? Fine, let the game do that, but it's not going to get anything like that in the real world.
Yeah, it seems a little silly to me to craft something that's magically summoned via a vessel of actual being. To craft it, why would you? You can have like a PETA type organization for astronauts. Like you could just make Atronach salt.
Yeah.
You don't have to kill these astronauts.
Yeah. See, that's the humane Atronach salt. It's vegan Atronach salt. That's what it is.
Exactly, vegan Atronach salt. That's great.
Mm-hmm.
I love that.
But okay, so real world, you think we can't have anything, and if you take the in-game way to make it, it's not feasible either in the real world. So what are our options for Atronach salts in the real world? Well, for a couple of these it was quite easy. For one, it was actually pretty difficult. In the real world, there is a solid gold contender for fire salts, and I didn't even have to work too hard at this. Sulfur, elemental sulfur, is a real world candidate for fire salts. It's yellow rather than red-orange, but it's crystalline. It can be crystalline, and it can be powdery, and it can certainly burn. It can burn like crazy, and equally, and this is the best thing about fire salts for me, in terms of using sulfur as a real world analog for fire salts, is because everyone is familiar with sulfur, elemental sulfur, from a folklore, mythic, demonic perspective, because the phrase fire and brimstone is sulfur. So everything that you connect with demons and the smell that appears when you summon them or when they disappear, that sulfur dioxide smell, that is brimstone, that is sulfur. So brimstone is intimately connected in our real world mythology with demonic things. So having Daedra, flame Atronach giving rise to fire salts and ESO, and sulfur is our real world analog. We've already associated sulfur with demonic appearance. It's just such a shoe-in for a perfect analogy that is, I didn't have to work hard at that at all.
Yeah, right, yeah.
So we have our fire salt, and it has properties that you'd associate with fire salts in game, and that's cool. Done and dusted. Sealed deal,
Yeah.
So that's pretty fun. Frost salts. Now, frost salts was fun. Frost salts was fun because I didn't want to go with water. Take the easy path, I hear you say. It's just ice. It's just water ice. We don't need to think any harder than that. But yeah, I'd like to challenge myself a little bit. So I decided
that ice.
Yeah, exactly. What good? I mean, and as a reason that I decided to do this, because I think it's a really cool potential magical connection here. I decided not to go for water ice or snow essentially for frost salts. I chose dry ice, which is solid carbon dioxide, which is a very common material in medical procedures because it's used to cool down things. You keep organs cool in dry ice. It's used in laboratories all the time. Solid little pellets, little white pellets of solidified carbon dioxide. They're used to keep things cool, and they are almost eerie. They give us this cold glow. One of the really coolest things about dry ice, it's called dry ice for a very specific reason, is it doesn't get wet. It doesn't become liquid carbon dioxide because in natural temperature and pressure, the phase diagram for carbon dioxide means that it transits, as you increase the temperature, it transits straight from a solid to a gas. There's no intervening liquid phase, which makes one of the coolest materials ever for scientific demonstrations. Essentially, it does what we call sublimate. It goes straight from solid to gas. Now that sounds really magical to me. So again, that gave me, which is why I thought, yeah, I want to pick dry ice. I don't want to pick normal ice.
Yeah.
So it's it kind of ticks the boxes. It's kind of mysterious. It's got some cool properties, and it does what it says on the tin. You know, it's cold. Damn cold.
Yeah.
It'll burn you. It'll give
And
you
it
really.
fits with the.
Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. No. I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I cut you off.
That's
I was
cool.
just gonna like kind of extrapolate your point and say that it does fit with the frost atronach thing too, because you never see a frost atronach melts. I mean, you see
No,
it like when you kill it, it
no,
crumbles
it crumbles.
essentially. So
It
yeah.
crumbles. Yeah. Um, so I mean, what I was going to say was it's the burn. You can get a really serious cold burn from dry ice. Um, it's if you wanted to remove a wart, you could probably just put cold dry ice against it instead of liquid nitrogen, which what some podiatrists would do these days. But yeah, it can give you a really nasty cold burn, which again fits. This thing is not just ice. You know, you can throw snowballs at each other. You don't kill each other with it. But so you think frost salts would be a little bit punchier than just normal ice, and dry ice fits the bill. So the thing that I think is really cool about how dry ice could really be the real frost salts from Skyrim, is that you can pull this out of the air. CO2 is all around us. It's part of our atmosphere. It's what plants use when they photosynthesize. It's part of our natural atmosphere. If you're a mage, you can imagine using your power of magic to concentrate and solidify the CO2 in our atmosphere, and then throw that at people. Like just like the animations you see, it's like a tiny stream of snow. But what if it was dry ice? You wouldn't have to get water from anywhere. You wouldn't rely on having a glass of water with you, and you'd essentially just pull the frost, pull it out of the air.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah.
And think of dragon breath. You know, if a frost dragon, or any breathing type, frosty type magic, the CO2 that you breathe out is a higher concentration than the air that you breathe in, because of our natural process of respiration. We take in oxygen, we produce CO2, we breathe it out. The CO2 of our breath is higher than the CO2 of the air around us, and that again gives you a really cool connection with a frost mage. They can just breathe out the frost at you, because they could just solidify the CO2 and then just be little pellets of ice at you. So I just love that potentiality for this to be a real world analog, but also it would then connect back up to the magical world, because you could really see it actually being used, using magic to manipulate the gases in the air to give you frost. And you could do it with water vapor, sure, but CO2 just seems like it's a more powerful cold than just ice. So yeah, that's my pick for frost salts.
Yeah. That is that connection and how it can actually manifest. You know, if Tamriel or if Elder Scrolls was real life, that's great. Imagine just that you have that long neck of the dragon, and I guess in some way it could force the air so much,
yeah.
and in such a concentrated amount, even more so than like you're saying normally.
Yep.
That it would be like a devastating attack.
Yeah.
Oh.
So.
Oh,
So fire salts was easy. Frost salts was fun. Void salts, that was tricky. I didn't really have a lot to go on here. What powdery material do we have in the real world that would contain the essence of electricity or lightning or the residue of that? I had to think pretty hard about that. You could think about things like powders that could create static electricity, but that's a bit weak from my perspective. I didn't really feel like I could use it. There aren't many materials that give rise to sparky electricity. The closest I could think of, perhaps, was lithium. The lithium salts used in lithium-ion batteries. The lithium-ion batteries are much more powerful than normal batteries, and you can get vicious discharge effects, like when you get lithium-ion batteries going on fire and bringing down airplanes. This is why you don't carry. You don't. This is why there was restrictions in carrying lithium-ion batteries, because they could generate intense heat and go and burn things down. But that's the reason why I didn't want to pick them, because the reaction of that discharge isn't electrical sparks, it's heat. And it can make things go on fire, but it's not like lightning sparking off it. So I had to look a little bit more deeply at this. And I thought, well, what happens after a lightning strike? Um, One of the commonly observed, or in folklore and literature, but not well understood. One of the things that can happen around lightning strikes is the creation of what's called ball lightning, which is like a spherical charged globe that kind of moves slowly and dissipates its energy after a lightning strike. So it's very hard to study. I don't think there's been any significant scientific study of it because it's such a rare phenomenon. But it has been observed and it has been talked about. It's like a will-o'-the-wisp almost that's created in the wake of lightning storms. Um, and this kind of seemed to fit for me because if you want something that's an after effect of something powerfully stormy, that kind of fits the bill. So I had a look at
Yeah.
a little bit of a deeper dig into ball lightning and what's known about it, and what people have been able to do to simulate ball lightning. And this is what led me to my choice of the real world material for void salts. Um, oh look, sorry, I wasn't paying attention to chat. Hey Rad, Miss Radcore is a great ESO streamer. Jeez, I wasn't even paying attention there. You could have just put that message into like 20 minutes ago, Rad, and I wouldn't even have noticed. So I'll just quickly do a quick shout out to Rad, because she's an absolute sweetheart, an incredible ESO streamer. Nice to see you in chat, Rad. Anyway, just get back to the void salts things. Having a science festival. I don't need to type this because you can hear me talk, but I'll type it in chat anyway. Yeah, we're having some great time talking about some magic and science with in ESO. It's been a lot of fun today so far. Alright, so back to the void salts. Ball lightning was my pick for a real world phenomenon that I think could give me a connection to material that we could use for void salts. So, and it kind of caught my imagination because a lot of the lightning effects, there's some really cool lightning effects in terms of the animations and the lights and the effects you can see in game. And there's a couple where you get balls of lightning being pulsed. Essentially, what the ultimate that sorcerers can have has them actually firing balls of lightning, essentially, at people. And ball lightning in the real world kind of fits that kind of aesthetic. It's kind of a localized electrical discharge, essentially, that can move. And I don't think anyone's ever been hurt by it in the real world. People have just been scared by it, potentially. But there's been some science done on it. One scientific group created a visual effect, an electrical effect that's almost like that by igniting powdered silicon. Now, why is that?
Wow.
Why is that relevant here? Well, one, they were trying to create ball lightning, so yes, that's relevant. But powdered silicon is essentially what you could create if you had a lightning strike against rock. A lightning strike might have enough energy to change the silica, which is silicon dioxide, which most rock actually is silicon dioxide. Just like amethyst is. It's silicon dioxide. If you hit it with lightning, there's a potential you could generate elemental silicon. Not elemental sulfur like the fire salts, but elemental silicon. Now, silicon is what our electronics industry uses for all the components, all the devices that we have. Silicon chips. Silicon powder, when ignited by these scientists, gave this spherical, like electrical discharge flame that could be representative of what ball lightning actually is. So void salts. You've seen all the storm Atronachs in game. There are these rock things held together with lightning. Now, if you've got lots of rock, lots of silica, lots of lightning energy. You can imagine that what's left over after this thing's been disapparated could be this powdered silicon. The lightning acting on the rocks of the Atronach, creating a small amount of powdered silicon that, if you used it, could create this kind of sparky, glowy discharge, much like you'd expect void salts to be able to do. So,
Yeah.
and it gets back to the finely cut void salts I was talking about earlier. Finely cut powdered silicon would give a bigger, more impressive conflagration than more rough, coarse silicon. So again, that connects back up to an in-game reference to it. But it's a valid, viable, potential, real-world example of void salts. You get powdered silicon, ignite it, creates this kind of light show like you get with ball lightning. So that was it. Those were my three picks: sulfur for fire salts, dry ice for frost salts, and powdered silicon for void salts. So that's it. That's the full circle. This is how you can be a real alchemist, an ESO, an Elder Scrolls alchemist in the real world. Listen to this podcast. Don't do this at home, folks. Please don't.
I feel like your comparisons were really, they're strikingly, like, I don't want to say accurate because there's no way to tell if they're accurate or not, but I would say they're like spot on. Like the void salt thing, because you can see the, like, you know how the storm Atronach's actually actively like stormy. You can see it being like a runoff or a fall off of that, totally of that after it's gone and perished, and maybe even exploding. Yeah, I can totally see all three. Yeah.
So there we go.
It's crazy. You did such a good job with the comparisons.
Yeah, I was worried about void salts. I was very, very worried about void salts.
I mean, there's nothing in the real world that helps you regenerate magicka. I mean, come on. Couldn't find one thing.
Yes. Yes.
Magicka being a real thing in real
alchemy's
life?
real, and Atronach residue is real. You know.
Yeah. Right. Exactly.
Oh dear.
Yeah. No. I love those. Those were great. And also I didn't know that sapphires and rubies were the same thing. That's,
Yeah, a lot of gems.
essentially
There's a lot of variation. A lot of variation in impurities can use lots of different variation in color. It's not all the same thing because, as I say, amethyst is not the same as ruby and sapphire, and diamond obviously isn't the same as ruby and sapphire. It's different minerals, but there's for a lot of them.
right.
You can get, it's the same baseline crystal, but essentially instead of an aluminium, they've put in a chromium, or instead of aluminium, they've put in an iron and a titanium next to it, and these things create differences in the way that the electrons move around this material, to the extent that when light interacts with it, it becomes coloured.
It's ridiculous. Yeah, that was really interesting, as well as the other stuff that you went over with the other three. And it's so interesting that we don't find that in ESO too. We don't find those materials in ESO. You think they'd be in good alchemy ingredients,
I got my Slayer achievement for killing lots of Atronachs, and I didn't get any. You know.
Yeah, right. You would think.
I'm trying to think. Is there actually a treasure, an item you can sell to a guild trader, to a trader? There is some essence, like powdery stuff you get from various different creatures, but it certainly isn't an alchemy reagent. It's not an alchemy reagent that can be used at the alchemy station. There may be a couple of things that you can find in game, but I wasn't able to find many references to them.
Yeah. No, nothing that I know of, except for the frost salt emote, like you said.
Like your fire salt one that you're doing in for the
Yeah.
viewers is pretty cool.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah. Yeah, but I really liked all that stuff, and bringing it into Skyrim obviously is appropriate because it's Skyrim. It's Skyrim time. Now.
Yes. I was very happy that I was able to find this, because I say with ESO the alchemy palette's quite limited because there is only certain things that they use in game for alchemy. Skyrim's much more diverse in terms of the alchemical reagents, many more than you get in ESO. So it was nice to look outside ESO for this episode, and it was appropriate given, as you said, because it's the 10th anniversary.
Yeah, definitely appropriate for that.
Cool. I'm spent.
Yeah.
All my salts are expended.
Need to rub a little bit more fire salts in your skin to.
Yeah. So relight my fire. Isn't that a song?
I was thinking when you said the skin one, besides repairing skin, I was thinking, like icy hot kind of, like where it warms up after it's cold application.
Oh yeah.
It'd be interesting.
Yeah.
Or those those hand warmers that you you basically, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, you can break them and suddenly it gets warm, kind of thing.
Yeah, and it becomes a solid for a second, and then melts in your hands. Yeah.
So I mean, material science has given us a lot of stuff that can play with heat with temperature. But I figure I say with the fire salts, I wanted something devilish. And it kind of the flame Atronachs are probably the most stereotypically demonic of the Atronachs.
I agree. I understand. Yeah.
So it kind of fit Brimstone.
Yeah.
And it's used
And
routinely. It's I mean even in X-Men, because that what's the mutant that can essentially disappear and reappear. Oh, I can't remember his name.
that's Nightcrawler.
Nightcrawler, because apparently when Nightcrawler does that, apparently it leaves the smell of brimstone. I think, pretty sure.
Yeah. He goes. Also a Marvel nerd, so a little bit of a Marvel nerd,
Mm?
but he like goes to a different realm that's I would say akin to like a hellish type of realm too, like exactly like you were
Ah,
saying,
okay,
and
right.
he like passes through it.
Mm?
So yeah, so exactly like you said, brimstone,
Mm?
hell,
Yeah,
demonic
the
things,
resonance there in their
and
folklore
it's
is quite strong.
yeah, absolutely, and it's there's this in the Deadlands there's obviously elementals, there's Atronachs of fire, or there's actually iron Atronachs too, and there's this storm Atronachs, and they're up on these cliffs that are over like main pathways, and I took a screenshot of one, and it literally looked like this iron Atronach was, pissing off of a fucking cliff. It looks like it. If
Lol.
anyone's listening and is interested, I will definitely post this on
Oh, excellent. Put it
my
on Twitter.
Twitter. But
Excellent.
I was questing and talking to one of my friends, and I told her, I was like, I think this Atronach's pissing his, but obviously they're balls of like fire.
Yeah.
I'm like, he's got to see a doctor about that because he's
Yeah,
he shouldn't be.
that's not. Yeah, that you want to. Yeah, doctor. Definitely.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. It's
Does
just
your
kind
urine
kind
burn?
of a funny thing,
Is it like lava?
right? So
Ouchie.
like lava is like,
Ouchie.
does it? Yeah, yeah, right.
Oh,
But
jeez.
anyways,
Mm.
um, yeah, that's pretty much all that I had. I don't have I usually like to wrap up things with like a book recommendation in
Oh, you
game
gave
lore
us
book,
one. You gave
but
us one already with
I did.
the lead up to the. Uh, what's it called again? It's the
Rising Threat.
Rising Threat. Yeah. Mm. So people can check that
You're
out.
right, I did. I do recommend people reading that. But also, I wanted to shout out another, not podcast, it's just a YouTube channel. It's Elder Memes' campaign, his D&D or unofficial Elder Scrolls tabletop role playing
Oh, I saw him tweet about that.
campaign.
I saw him tweet
Yeah,
about that.
it's his. He released his third episode, and it's just good. I support him, his stuff, and tabletop role playing games are good too. So, and there's some amazing work done on the on that actual conversion to the fifth edition of D&D into an Elder Scrolls backdrop. I guess there's a lot of work that's been done by a lot of great folks like that. So it's really cool. Yeah, you've looked at it before.
Yeah, I took a look at that.
It's,
We thought about having that little one shot. We never got around to.
Yeah, it's some good work, and yeah, it's interesting. Folks want to check that out, and it's fun. There's pretty much all the UESP folks are the party members of that. It's Pylon, it's
some good folks.
Lawson, Hyrule, yeah, Iron, lots of good folks on there too. Yeah, so it's a fun time, and yeah, you get some good laughs out of their antics. So that's my recommendation.
Well, shall we wrap things up then?
Yeah.
This has been a mammoth 2.5 hour podcast.
I know. It's because we had a lot to talk about.
Yeah, a lot of stuff to talk about. The delay from when we should have podcast a couple of weeks ago has given us more material to work with. Interestingly, the topic I had, I'll save it for next year. I had a witchy kind of eldritch style alchemy type thing that I was going to do, but I'll save that for next October.
I can't remember what I was. I remember I told you I was gonna do something, but I don't exactly remember what
I
I said I
remember,
was gonna do. But
but I
what
don't.
was it?
You were going to do the wee races.
Oh, I was gonna do the. Yeah, I was. You're right. I was gonna do that. That's gonna be good. But I can do them. I can do them. Whatever. Where's the start?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah.
Attractive Breton mages with wolf pets. I think there's a win-win-win there. I think.
Yeah, and like Bosmer, it was of the Bosmer, which is interesting.
Cool.
Everyone's favorite race.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think for
oh yeah.
Oh, thank you, Rad. That's really sweet of you. Just got a host there from Miss Radcore.
Aw.
That's really sweet.
Thank you.
So yeah, we're the podcast is going to go on a little bit of Christmas hiatus, I think, because Liv and I both got a fairly busy period coming up in December. So I think we'll probably won't get our next episode until January. But I will be getting back to streaming, which I've been on hiatus from as well for the past little while.
Oh, good. Good.
So I'll be online a little bit more than I have been.
Awesome. Yeah. I say this every week to myself, but I want to stream, but I don't know. You have such a good personality interacting with people, and I just kind of just want to play because I was thinking about like, oh, I could stream Skyrim, but I don't know. I guess I could. It would be easy to do that since I've pretty much done everything.
10-year anniversary stream.
I might. Yeah, be popular. Could be popular.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see. Keep your eyes posted.
All right. Well, I'll keep my eyes out for that.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks. It's nice for you to be here, Rad. As we don't get a big audience for a podcast, so it's nice to have somebody come in and chat. Chilling and lurking. Nice to see you again. Yeah. Same to you, Rad. Looking forward to catching your next stream.
I appreciate the support.
Indeed. So we'll be going on Christmas hiatus, so we'll have an episode in January. But this episode will be getting uploaded to all our various different outlets and channels, and so that people can be able to get the VOD on Liv's YouTube channel. The VOD will be up on Twitch for about 3 months, and we'll get the recording up on our podcast outlets so that everyone can tune in and revisit the stories of the build up to the events of Skyrim and the Atronach salts, which is certainly what you do not want to sprinkle onto your fish and chips. Definitely not.
Yeah, definitely not.
Do not. Interestingly, this is the thing. There is such a thing that actually I could have. This could have been my real world analog. I completely forgot about this. So I'll just add another 5 minutes onto the podcast. We have have something in Australia called chicken salt.
Okay.
And it's used if you go and get hot chips. We call them hot chips. We don't call them French fries. When I'm from the UK, I call them chips. Chips here and where you are like potato chips. You know, like you get in a bag, like fried and cold. But in Scotland, chips are hot chips. You get them wrapped in paper from the chippy. But they call them hot chips in Australia to separate them from normal chips. Anyway, if you get hot chips like your French fries, anywhere in Australia, normally it'll be with what's called chicken salt, which is a magical. It's almost like the recipe for Coca-Cola. It's a fiercely guarded secret, a combination of herbs, spices, and normal salt that's used instead of just simple salt at all hot chip vendors all around Australia. And it's kind of orangey red because it's got a bit of paprika in it. So that would be my second pick for an example of fire salts, but an edible version.
Love that.
It's chicken salt, and it's kind of
chicken salt.
It's tasty as it's fantastic.
Chicken salt for hot chips, not for chickens. I guess you can put it on chicken.
Oh, they've seasoned chicken with it as well, but most of the time people have it on their chips. Yes.
How funny. That sounds good though, because I wanted that guy, or the person who's cornered the market on chicken salts. Really, and every vendor has it. Oof. Some good mage.
Indeed.
He's making it out of his crafting station.
That's it. There's some guy with a crafting station somewhere in Adelaide. I think it originated in South Australia, which is where I'm from. There was a certain combination: garlic salt, paprika, normal salt, kind of It all mixed together. It's really tangy. It's just really great on hot chips. It's fantastic. Yes.
It's actually made of rubies and
Exactly. That's it. It's just crushed up rubies. It's very expensive. Oh jeez. Anyway, let's wrap things up. So podcast will be up on all the various outlets, so you can revisit what we've been chatting about. We will have a New Year podcast in January, but we'll go on a bit of a break as Christmas starts rearing its head, or Thanksgiving, then Christmas, because you've got Thanksgiving as well as Christmas to deal with in the coming weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
it's like the last Thursday of the month, and so the Friday it's probably going to be more family stuff. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Makes me think of that meme, or was that tweet that's gone around? We will stop our war on Christmas when Christmas stops its forced occupation of November.
Yes, it's so true. Because all the stores around here, immediately into Christmas. Like I went to Target this last weekend, and yeah, Halloween's just like a whisper, but a whisper. Like it didn't even happen.
And the poor Thanksgiving settlers lodged wedged in between, and it doesn't get any airtime. Poor Thanksgiving.
I mean, I guess rightfully so. It's kind of like those a colonial holiday kind of. But I like to see it more of a family get together day.
Yeah,
I
see
each other.
Holidays like that. It's difficult when you're right. It's got significant colonial. It's not just undertones; it's colonial overtones. It's really and it represents quite dramatically nasty parts of history. We've got the same thing in Australia with Australia Day, which is the day the first fleet arrived, and dispossessed the Aboriginal people in Australia of their homeland, and it's a public holiday. And there's a lot of in here the Aboriginal people of Australia consider it Invasion Day, so it's a very similar resonance to how the First Nations people of America would feel about Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that's how they did with Columbus Day too. They called it Indigenous Peoples Day, which I think is great because Columbus did not discover America.
No, he just turned up. Already here. He turned up and claimed credit for something that had been around for thousands of years beforehand.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Awesome, but like you're saying, holiday. Everyone have happy holidays.
Indeed.
Whichever you celebrate, enjoy them. Enjoy your family. Yeah.
Take care, everyone.
Happy winters.
Yeah. So you'll see me on stream before Christmas, but other than that, the podcast will return in. It's probably going to be 2 months' time or so. I would have thought. Yeah.
Yeah.
We haven't fixed the date. We might want to do it a little bit earlier in January than the end of January, just so that there's not such a big gap between podcasts.
That's kind of what I was thinking too, like mid-January.
Yeah.
Yeah. We'll let you know though. So keep your eyes on the Twitter.
Yes.
On the Twitter.
Follow our socials. Twitter account. Liv and I always amplify whatever's tweeted from the main podcast account, but you'll always find out what we're up to in any of those 3 Twitter accounts. And thanks for those who've listened. Thanks for those who've joined us. Thanks for those who will listen. The future listeners. Take care, everyone. And we shall see you next time.
Yes. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.